6:30, we'll call Sawyer County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Ask the clerk to call a roll, please.
Steve Carrianen. Here. Kay Wilson. Tweed Schulman.
Here.
Stacy Hessel. Here. Randy Newman. Here. Mark Helwig. Here. Thomas Duffy is excused. Marshall Savitsky. Here. Brian Bissonette. Chuck Van Etten. Here. Jeff Haney. Here. John Righeimer. Here. Ron Kinsley.
Here.
Ron Buckholz. I see his name virtual. John Sarowski. Here. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
thank you. Number 4, certification for compliance open meetings law.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Number 5, the agenda. The agenda is set as presented. Number 6, 2025 budget. Our own accountant, Mr. Mike Markren, please.
All right, thank you. I am going to try to go quickly here because we have a lot to cover in half an hour. The first page is the budget hearing, which we had a snap. It was for 6. The posting was for 6:30, so that's why we are pulling off here. Starting with the presentation of the budget. You can go right to the second slide there. Some of the budget highlights: net new construction was 1.32%. That equates to about $140,000 in new money. It's remarkable to have 1.32% new construction when we have such a high appreciation the last 3 years. So we're pretty grateful for that. It is the highest it's been in 15 years. So that's been good. The budget I'm presenting tonight does include the salary increases built right in. What we've put in there is a 2% increase. It's actually the first payroll in January, which will be January 14th, and then a 1% on July 13th, and then the 1.25% steps as scheduled. The budget proposal also includes expanding the steps from 11 to 15, and all of that is built right into the budget within each department. Health insurance, we've got in here to 5%. We are going to beat that, so we will be safe there. And sales tax revenue continues to grow, but it's really kind of leveled off now. The budget highlights, there are 6 different areas that we can levy outside of the revenue limit. Those are bridge and culvert construction and repair, EMS, payments to public libraries, and general obligation debt. Those 4 we use. The 2 that we have not used yet or ever are property and casualty insurance premiums and court-ordered placements. So those are something we could look at in the future if we needed to. The next slide is kind of a breakdown of the departments within the general fund. And I do have some explanations of things that varied from the previous year. The first one is the payments to other funds. We have reduced that from last year. And then administration, we added a line item for safety in the budget. We are doing some of that this year. Next year it would actually be a budget item. IT had some additional software licenses that we needed to buy, so that went up a little bit. Surveyor added a family insurance plan. That makes a big difference. Our insurance plan is about $30,000 for a family plan, so that does affect the budget quite a bit. Going down to zoning, that is one of the 2 positions that were requested. Those 2 positions are in this budget I'll be presenting. That is a tech position to help with some of the, we have a lot of people coming to the window in zoning, so we needed a position there. In the sheriff's department, we're looking at adding a court security administrative assistant that will help with tracking that stuff. Deputy has been doing that work, and we feel we can do it more efficiently with some admin support. And then there's another family insurance plan on the Veterans Administration. You can see at the bottom, the overall general fund budget is actually going down slightly. Moving to the next page, this is kind of a breakdown of the expenses of the whole county. Again, general fund is going down a little bit, and you can see the levy there of 7.2 million, which is right around where it was last year. Human services is increasing. We have seen an uptick in placements for our juveniles, so we did up the budget there a little bit. And you can see the levy there, which is pretty similar to last year as well. Debt service, you're seeing an increase there. There are two reasons for that. Number one, CIP, which is our capital improvement plan that we've been doing through borrowing for about 5 years now. And every year previous to this, we've done a repayment over 2 years, 3 years, even sometimes 10 years. I think the first one was. We're at a point now where we can absorb it each year, which is what we wanted to get to. So we're paying less interest. So that increased a little bit. And then the other thing is the communications project that we've talked about, the towers and all that goes along with that. So that is built into the budget as well. Highway department, you can see there's an increase over last year. That is due to some highway projects we were wanting to do. One, a bridge on Double C, and then a project on Highway B. And our portions of that are built into the budget as well. Other funds, that's up quite a bit. The biggest contributing factor to that is we have a dam project for this year. In 2022, we had some surplus money. We took $400,000, put it into the Resource Development Fund. We're gonna pull that out for the bridge project, or the dam project in 2025. If we didn't pull it out, that would go onto the CIP, which would increase taxes. So using the surplus from 3 years ago, we're able to keep the taxes down for 25. And then you can see the total levy there of just under 14.9 million. Next slide. This is a breakdown then of the levy itself. You can see the operating levy is going up about $75,000, less than a percent increase. The debt service is going up 55% for the reasons I just laid out. And one of the reasons we did up debt service is you can see the special purpose levy is going down quite a bit. And that is due to a couple factors. The ambulance had built up a little bit of a fund balance. We are going to draw that fund balance down, which decreases the levy for ambulance services, which is outside of the revenue limit cap. So that affects that. And we also are not buying an actual ambulance itself in 2025. So that brought that down about 30%. So you can see the total levy then is going up about $500,000, 3.48%. Next slide. This is the levy limit calculation. This is my own worksheet I'd put together. It's hard to read, I apologize for that. You basically start out with last year's base, subtract off the personal property, or actually add that in to get to that. And then you add net new construction. Then I actually have to subtract the personal property aid for 25. Every year previously, that number had been the same. This year, we did get an increase in personal property aid by $50,846. So that increased what we have to deduct there. And then the adjustment is due to the difference in debt service levy to give us our allowable levy. The next page is what was requested for additions from previous years. These I mentioned already, a couple of them, the sheriff's support position and the zoning technician. The final one is additional highway construction. That is primarily the CC Bridge and the Highway B project that we would like to put in there. And again, we were able to put these into the budget because of the reduction in the special purpose levy. So when I'm looking at the levy, I always want a smooth either level or a smooth trajectory. If we didn't increase the debt service levy this year, we would have seen a decrease and then more of an increase next year. So instead of having that, people would love the decrease this year. When you have a bigger increase next year, it wouldn't be as fun. So we always look at any decision we propose, we're looking 1, 2, 5 years down the road. So that's the reason for that. So then we came to the budget adjustments. The budget as requested came to 2.85 million we would have to draw from fund balance. The first little section there is what makes that up. Primarily, it is a transfer to HHS. So what we did is made some corrections or adjustments from that. And I'll talk about some of these later. Resource Center requested about a $20,000 increase. We're recommending a $10,000 increase, so that reduced it a little bit. The highway construction, we're moving that to primarily CIP. And then HHS over the years has built up a pretty healthy fund balance of their own. So we're recommending that they would draw from that if needed. So that left a final fund balance draw of $681,000. Last year, it was $750,000. I think the year before it was 1.3 something, the year before that 1.2 something. So it is less than it's been in previous years. And in those 3 previous years, we have not had to do the draw at all. We see that our revenues generally exceed what we budget and we're okay in the end. Plus there's a contingency of $200,000 built into the budget, which we haven't had to touch either. So all those things, we haven't had to touch that in the past, and our hope is we wouldn't have to this year either, or next year. And even if we did, we would be well above our 20 to 33% of expenditure fund balance. The next slide is a little bit deeper breakdown of the levy components. The general fund, which again, a very minimal increase of under 50,000. Health and Human Services increase of 25,000. The resource officer and land conservation would remain the same. We're recommending Nemacolin Transit remain the same as well. I'll get into that a little bit later. The debt service increase we've talked about. Highway, just a minor increase. And then, so the operating levy would go up about 1.15 million, but the special purpose levy is going down $650,000, which leaves that increase of 500,000 I mentioned earlier, or 3.48%. You can see with the county valuation growing, I think it was 12.43% this year it grew. That puts our mill rate down to 2.46, which is the lowest it's been in about 15 years again. And that does not mean taxes are going down. I already mentioned that they're going to go up about $500,000. What it means is our increase in valuation growth exceeded the growth of the tax levy itself. And the main increase in the overall levy is that highway work that we really wanted to get completed this year. So next is the ambulance service levy itself. I've got last year versus this year. You can see the decrease in the operating levy and the decrease in not having an actual ambulance purchase. So it is down over $300,000, over $500,000. So that brings our mill rate just for the ambulance from 33 cents down to 20 cents per thousand. Next is the library service. And I've got a kind of a history for about the last 7 years here. We did not change any of their requested amounts. Weiss and Winter left their request the same as last year. The column on the far right is the formula, if we adhere to what the formula is. So we are funding those two beyond the formula. LCO requested what the formula amount is. And then the out-of-county ones, we always do at formula. We don't give them more than they have from circulation. So overall, it's up a little bit due primarily to the increase in out-of-county circulation. The next page is outside organizations. These are the ones besides the libraries that are outside of Sawyer County. And the first one is Senior Resource Center. And I mentioned they asked for about a $20,000 increase. We're recommending 10. You can see the trajectory there from what we have given Senior Resource Center. And Andy and I started here in 2022. And from that point on, we've actually increased our allocation to senior resource by over 33%. If I look at just the county allocation, we give them 2 amounts of money. One is the allocation, one is a flow-through transportation grant, which every year is $79,889. So that remains unchanged. But what we have increased is what we've given from the county from about 105,000 to 140,000 would be this year. So I just wanted to point that out. Nemacoggin Transit is similar, not as much. That had been flat at 150,000 for years. And our first year together here, Andy and I recommended increasing that to 155. We did 165 last year. We're recommending keeping that flat. They requested 165 in operating and additional 15,000 in CIP. We are not recommending the CIP. I don't know that we can do a CIP when we don't own the property that's purchased.
Chairman, I got a question.
Yes.
Mike, the request is 180 for Nemacoggin Transit.
Yep, 165.
Yeah, there was a confusion with the CIP request.
Yep.
The actual request is 180.
If I combine
Okay.
the two, yep. All right, next is just a list of the statutes that allow us to give to these outside organizations. I know that's really hard to read, but it is in the packet. The next slide, I won't spend a lot of time on this. This is our 5-year plan for our capital improvement plan. And going to the next slide though, would be what we're asking for 2025. The total amount is $2,798,000. And then from that, we have various sources of revenue that are covering that. We've got some sale of squads for 20,000. We have fund balance from the airport that we would apply towards that. And I do want to mention that the airport project on here is not the one that's been discussed. It is a resurfacing of the existing runway. Just wanted to clarify that. And then the $800 dam that we're doing, we do get a 50-50 grant, so 50%, 400,000 comes from the state, 400,000 is coming from that transfer from the resource fund that we developed. And then there's some LRIP funds for highway and then sale of highway equipment for 130. So that comes up to 1,160,000, which leaves a debt issue of 1.638460 for our CIP. The next slide then, this is a proposal I had put together with some estimates on what we opted to do for our communications, building our own towers and infrastructure at a cost of $2.75 million. This is a 10-year repayment plan on that debt. I estimate at 5%, we're more likely to get a little under 4 actually, because it would be a tax exempt note. But I wanted to estimate high. Two things I want to point out here. It's a 10-year repayment. I've got a elevated payment on the first year and an elevated payment on the last year. The reason for that is, again, like I've mentioned, our special revenue levy was down this year, so we have a little more room to repay some debt this year. And then 2034 will be the year after the second $4 million issue to complete this and do our CIP for 23 and 24 was issued last year. So that will fall off so we can have an elevated payment that year. These will not be final numbers. The actual, that debt number of $3,002,000 will change slightly. I think we can keep it right around 3, but it won't be exactly that because I've got estimates without getting actual bids yet. The next slide shows our existing debt service repayment amortization schedule, existing with the exception of adding in the CIP for next year and the communication towers, which would both be issued in 24. And then I have the disclaimer on the bottom. This looks like our debt's going to keep going down. We intend to annually have a CIP debt issue, which we will pay off in that year. So the issue will always, there'll always be an additional column as we move forward. One will fall off, a new one will be added to keep that debt issue consistent throughout 20 years. And then the last slide in this section is the mill rate history. You can see we're estimating 2.46. And last year was 2.68, so we're going down 8.2%. The mill rate's gone down 5 years in a row now. And like I said, actually the last 2 years have been the lowest in the last 15 or so. So that is the budget. Now, we're going to look at what we are recommending for our fee schedule for the county services. And there aren't very many changes here. If you want to go to, I don't know if you can tell, but page 3, Alex. We are looking at ambulance fees. We are not ready to present that yet. So that has been held off, but I do want to highlight that that will be forthcoming. Then I think if you go over to page 6, these ones have already been approved by the board. These are the medical examiner fees, and we are allowed to increase those by CPI annually. We did that, and that was approved, I think, last month. The next page, page 7, there is a new proposed fee for recovery court participation in our criminal justice system. You can see that's phased in there. And then all the way to page 19. We are proposing a daily inmate fee for sentenced inmates. That would be new. That is something we could track with the admin support positions. Actually, one of the reasons we put that in the budget is so we could do that. Position will pay for part of itself at least. The next page that has a change is on page 22. On sales of tax deed, we used to have an advertising fee of $10. We are adding line items to that and putting down actual cost. The state has changed how that whole system will be handled, and we want to be able to get our expenses recovered, and we wouldn't at $10. So that would be a change. And then the final one is on page 25. Just an addition in zoning on the fee for buildings that are 100 to 199 square feet. We're also putting a fee for storage sheds on vacant land up to 144 square feet. So that would be under that as well at $50. Then moving on to the next section, this is kind of our employee count here, the FTE.
Chairman, can I stop him real quick?
Yes.
Mike, have you included the tourist rooming house license and fee, or are we gonna wait till that?
No, we haven't.
No, haven't even thought about that.
yet. So the FTE count, the 2 positions I mentioned are added in here, and we actually have a reduction of half an FTE at the airport. We used to have some casual employees that did mowing out there. We are now contracting that. And then, actually I skipped over CIP, but we've kind of discussed that already. So then let's move on to the salary grid. There we go. This is going to be very hard to read. So these reflect the 2 increases both in January and July. The bottom one is the January increase of 2%. The top one is the 1% in July. And the highlighted columns are the step 11, which is the first highlight column, used to be the control point, which we kind of considered 100%. We're still going to use that as the base calculation, so that will be still 100%. The other steps and lanes will be calculated off of that, but we are proposing 4 more steps up to step 15. We have several employees who have been here a long time serving the county, and they've been held at their step they've been at, so we would recommend doing that in an attempt to keep up with neighboring counties as far as the pay grid goes. And then the whole next section, I am not going to go through page by page. It's just a very detailed budget that you can look at and bring back at the November meeting when we would actually certify the budget and levy. So does anybody have any questions or open it up to public comments?
Hearing none, we'll move to the number 7. Number 7 is our public hearing for the budget of 2025. At this time, anybody wishes to speak to the board, we ask you to keep it to 3 minutes. And overall, we're not going to go past 30 minutes total. First person I have is Mr. Doug Kurtzwell.
Douglas Kurtzweil, 11055W Arrow Road, Hayward, Wisconsin. I had a couple of questions. I think one of them's been answered. A couple of real quick ones. Senior Resource Center, is any of that money in there for Waldo? And then Hayward Lakes, it says Hayward Lakes Association, which is, I believe, folded into the VCB. And they're getting $50,000. They've been getting $50,000 a year, at least going back to 2017. Back in the day when we were doing room taxes and everything, it was indicated that they would no longer request that $50,000 from the taxpayers if it was defrayed by room taxes. They are literally getting hundreds of thousands of dollars a year now from the room taxes. And I don't know if they need a handout of $50,000 from the property taxpayers anymore. The other things I had in reviewing the composite stuff that was in the public notice that was in the paper, I did notice that under an item of conservation and development, there was a line item increase of about $120,000. I suspect and affirm, if I'm right or wrong, that probably has to do with zoning also and the much needed additional staff member in the zoning department. I hope that's enough. I think they might need more than that. And then also in HHS, there was only a $35,000 increase in the line item. And that sure isn't going to cover the 1 or 2 additional people they are going to need in order to even begin to enforce this TRJ ordinance that is proposed to be adopted in the subsequent meeting tonight. So that's basically what my concerns were about the budget. I hope I elucidated them clearly enough so that you all understand what I'm asking. And I'm willing to take questions if that's approved. Otherwise, I'll give it to somebody else.
Anybody have any questions for? We're not going to answer questions now anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going through these requests, most of the people seem to be wanting to speak on something else, but if anybody else has a budget, I have Miss Linda Zilmer for budget.
Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner, resident of the Village of Birchwood. I have several items to mention tonight. First of all, I want to start off with providing some context. Almost half of the current county board members here and the county administrator attended the Wisconsin Counties Association training this spring. There's a whole segment in this book, and maybe those who attended can share their materials with the county board members who did not. But there, for the budget public hearing, it requires a Class 1 notice not less than 15 days before the budget hearing. So the notice for tonight's hearing appeared in the October 9th and the October 16th edition of the weekly newspaper, so it did not meet notice requirements. And also in this book, it has a general timeline that most counties follow, and budget hearings are generally in November. So I hope we're all back here for another properly noticed budget hearing prior to your November board meeting when you act. I really appreciate the detail that is able to be explained at these meetings, and then people can also watch them on videos, as well as the detailed chart of our general ledger accounts that are available on the county website. I do have some concerns with the full-time equivalent schedule here. It does not break out the positions within departments, and it does not break out the actual number of employees. So while it's maybe helpful from a dollar standpoint, I don't know how, as committees of jurisdiction or you as a full county board, really understand what departments need to operate. And I guess I also want to jump back a minute with the fact that this probably needs to come back in November. There is the chance at the November committee meetings to have department heads present their budgets like I have requested now for several years. So that could get into talking about the number of positions in each department. Along with the rate schedule that you saw there, it does not include all the employees of the county. And primarily, a lot of my comments are going to be towards ambulance. After the last Public Safety Committee meeting, I asked 3 different county board members if they knew what ambulance personnel were being paid, and we don't. So the last time the county did the study on where to locate another ambulance station, there were some rates, and I know those rates that existed back then are nowhere near comparable to what the surrounding services pay for especially those paid on call people who respond, especially down in the southern part of the county. I hope the county, I noticed that there was the spend down of some ambulance surplus and there was not going to be a new ambulance purchase, but I think additional money should be spent for a study of response times for ambulance service and maybe better understand your operations, because time is critical. It's not just about the money. Another place that the county could maybe generate revenues is go back to charging for event fees in county lands and on county trails. I believe if you reserve a county picnic area or building, there may be a fee, and events like the Birkebeiner and things can help bear the cost of conservation in parks. There are also, I am concerned as the county tries to provide more, the county highway department provides more services to towns, that the towns are actually paying the full cost of what the county services are. And I don't see that discussed. It's something that is expanding and new, and I don't see that discussed at the committee meetings. And then as far as cost savings, back when Sawyer County changed course on the tourist rooming house zoning ordinance and then became an agent of the state, it also took on water sampling and testing. And I believe that's probably losing the county money and is probably more costly than it can be done by other people. So elimination of county water testing might also free up health and human services people to do things like that. So I guess I will wait until hopefully maybe there's more budget discussion at committee level and then next month before you adopt the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would wish to speak to the budget?
You have my sheet up there, but I didn't probably fill it out correctly. I'm Mindy Simons, 6720 Florida Lane, Stone Lake, Wisconsin. I'm actually the new executive director of the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. And on behalf of myself, our staff, and our board of directors, I wanted to say thank you to the county board for recognizing the importance of tourism in our community and your continued support of keeping us in the budget at our requested amount. So as you are aware, our room tax funds can only be used on marketing that's likely to generate overnight stays. So the county contribution assists us in other ways, such as operating our information center, which is very important to our visitors and for locals as well. So over the course of my career, I have had the opportunity to sell everything from fax machines to pharmaceuticals. And I am thrilled to now be leading the charge of selling my favorite place on earth. So I look forward to working with you in the future and reporting on a committee level of everything that we're doing at the VCB. And again, thank you for your support.
Thank you. You want her to speak now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Benjamin Kurtzwell, 16040 W West Lane. I'm also currently the chairman for the town of Hayward. I just learned, I was looking through stuff. It appears the county's budgeting about $175,000 a year for legal. advice and legal fees. For that kind of money, I just say it seems that we should have somebody in-house, full-time job. But I don't know if that's the case. So I just say that maybe that's something that you guys should look at, maybe another way to save some money. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Carrie, do you want to speak about transit now?
Hi, I'm Carrie Saban. I am the manager of the Namakagon Transit. Oh, can you hear me better now? Sorry. So we have asked for a increase to our budget to 180,000. I just wanted to speak to some of the reasons that we're asking for this increase. So just to give you a little example, in 2021, our buses that we purchase cost us $71,644. We have just ordered 7 buses that should be arriving in early 2025. And the cost of these buses are now, for the same bus, $142,000. So buses have doubled in prices, along with a lot of other things. We've also increased wages recently just to retain the great employees that we do have and to help hire new employees. We are also looking at building a whole building to store our buses in. Currently, they're stored outside, which is very hard on them in the winter. It also, this results in our drivers during the winter months having to clean those buses off when they start their day at 5:30 a.m. And this could result in a fall or an injury, which is not good. It is also very hard on the buses, like I said. So we're hoping to be able to build that and take that out of our money market account. We have the 7 new buses, which we should receive in early 2025. When those arrive, we do have to write the check for about $823,000. We do get 80% of that back from WSDOT, but that can take several months to see. So we have to have this money available to be able to purchase these things. And we just finished our audit and got our audit report back today, actually. The auditor presented that, and we've had no findings and had a wonderful audit.
Good.
Are there any questions for me?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else care to speak about the budget? If not, this ends our budget hearing. We'll go to number 8, which is public comment for the rest of the board meeting. Yes.
On the budget.
Yes.
Not on the hearing, but we did list it in the agenda as a discussion action for the budget. This is the board's budget, but it's not, the board can make amendments and changes to it. So it's just, like I had mentioned last meeting, it's helpful if you can make them on the floor at the November meeting as well. It's helpful if we know in advance so we can make any adjustments or present a resolution to you that you can introduce to amend the budget. So there's an opportunity here. If anybody wants to discuss that, you can do that.
Well, if the board would want to discuss the budget at this time, now's the time to do it. Or put together something prior to the November meeting.
Andy, would we need a resolution then presented, or we can do it now?
My suggestion would be if you do the motion now, we'd have a amendment ready for the November meeting. Prepare something in writing.
Sure. Well, then I guess I'm prepared to make a motion that we increase transit to their requested amount at 180. That'll be my motion.
So we have a motion by Mr. Schuman to increase transit to 180,000. Mr. Slawski.
I'd like to second that motion to increase to 180.
Motion is second by Mr. John Swarowski. Any discussion? So at this time, we'll vote. You want to vote now so that we know what to put together? Okay, so we'll vote on this motion of increasing the Nabocoggan Transit bus budget to 180. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved to increase it to 180. Any other thing that we want to discuss about the budget at this time? Hearing none, we'll conclude the public hearing with that part. And we'll move on to number 8 of public comments for the rest of the board meeting. We have quite a few people that wish to speak. The county board can end it at 30 minutes. I don't want to do that, so if you speak, please keep things moving along. We'll start with Mary Stubbs.
Good evening. I'm Mary Stibbe.
State your address, please.
Yep, 14941W, Edina Lake Drive, Hayward.
Thank
I'm a full-time resident. I wanted to speak in favor of the TRH ordinance. We purchased our home in 2015. 3 years ago, we had a TRH built on the property next to us. And since then, we have dealt with noise issues, unattended campfires, and most recently trespassing with renters using our dock to fish. And when we've confronted them on it, the response we received was, oh, we thought you weren't home. An attempt was made in 2017 to create an ordinance to address issues. And at that time, there was 123 TRHs. Today, there's almost 600. So it's time to take action. I believe the time is overdue. I support the ordinance as a means to address the complaints raised by those living next to TRH. I also see this as a zoning issue that has allowed commercial businesses to be operated in residential areas. I've not found anyone knowingly wanting to live next to a TRH rental, including 58% of the TRH owners that live outside the county or even outside of Wisconsin. One exception might be the owners that live next door, not having issues, but renters behave differently when they know the owner is on site. From the discussions I heard at the HHS meeting, the committee voiced concerns with the ordinance being overreach and an impact on tourism. What I didn't hear was the concern for the residential properties of our county, property owners of our county. Revisions have been made to the proposed ordinance, including compromise to the occupancy based on the septic system +2 per facility. The state code is 2 persons per bedroom. I believe the concern that was described at the last meeting of overtaxing septic systems is real and will affect the quality of the groundwater and surface water. We should be concerned about protecting our natural resources. Tourism will go elsewhere if we don't protect what attracted them here in the first place, and I think that's true for the residents as well. At the previous meeting, I kept hearing that the ordinance is not, at previous meetings, I kept hearing ordinance is not needed because of only a few bad apples. This ordinance will not be burdensome for 98% of the good apples. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nancy?
Nancy Schreier, 10777 North Namocoggan Lane. Unable to wrap my head around the persistent comment from Kaufman Associates regarding the illegality of the FAA having the ability to enforce airport expansion if larger planes wish to utilize said airport as it is. I did an extensive internet search for answers, and I know that you guys are in a tough spot with this, so I want to share some of this information with you. Kaufman Associates have basically told us that we, the county, must approve this massive expansion plan, which invites C and D level jets to land, or we, the county, will face huge fines and possible litigation. When you review that plan, Chapter 5, you'll see roads are being moved, 67 new hangars, 60 by 60 feet, and 3 80 by 80 feet to be built. Extended runways to exceed 6,000 feet, new towers, lighting systems, new terminal buildings, waste management systems, fuel tanks, et cetera, all to accommodate these larger jets. The C/D-3-4000 design standards. And all of this will be on the west side of the airport bordering the Namakagon River, with the exemption of a southeast portion acquiring 2 homes and the north section encompassing the acquisition of 4 or more homes. The buffer land, 9 acres between the current airport road and Namakagon Lane, is currently spared, with the understanding that it'll be utilized as needed. When I looked further for cost of this, I did find, and I tell you that I used AI because I'm not a legal person nor a finance person, but the cost of this is going to be between $400 million and $800 million. When I looked at the legality of the statements that were being shared with us, I found that quote, the FAA cannot directly enforce airport expansion for aircraft not designed to land at the current airport. However, the FAA can influence airport expansion through funding and regulatory measures. For example, the FAA provides grants for airport improvements and expansions under programs like the Airport Improvement Plan and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. I've identified through the Federal Aviation Committee's AIP handbook and numerous other FAA websites that the fact is the FAA does not mandate any airport expansion. That comes upon us if we accept funding for this, and the funding is 90%, with us, the county, picking up the other 10%. According to the FAA AIP Handbook Advisory Circular, and I got that quoted for you, airport master plans may address major revisions and long-term plans for airport development, while those that change only parts of the existing document may require a relatively low level of effort, tending to be called a master plan update. I ask that you, our county supervisors, not accept the airport expansion plan as proposed in Chapter 5, but rather propose a master plan update to remain as it is, with the exception of the new runway expansion of 5,000 feet, to which we've already been allotted $2,241,000 of AIP funds, making our airport safe and accommodating existing air traffic. I hope you don't have to make this final decision before you have your legal review everything that I've shared with you and a cost-benefit analysis to what we would be paying out versus what the benefits of having this airport expansion be. And I thank you.
Thank you. Susie?
I'm going to pass right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ron?
Well, thank you. We've been up here a lot for this, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Ron Ulmer. I live at 10713 Namakagon Lane, immediately adjacent to the airport property. Bought that property in 1994, built my house in 1995, fully aware that I was next door to an airport. Didn't bother me a bit. My realtors, Harold Tiffany, his son, told me that the property adjacent to our house between Airport Road was a buffer zone, so the river and the residents there could be protected from the airport activity. When the ILS program went in 1996, There was an effort also to add 52 acres on that 9-acre parcel on the west side of Airport Road, the existing Airport Road. And there was, in 2002, a environmental assessment done on that. The DNR, the Wild River people through the National Park District, and of course all the neighbors on both sides of the river were objecting to the impacts that it would have on our property. You got a supervisor by the name of Don Trattin. Don was also the supervisor, or I'm sorry, the chairman of the town of Hayward at the time. After about 90 people, bigger room than this, objecting to this, Don made the motion, which is advisory only, a resolution that said, I move that there be no airport expansion on the west side of Airport Road. Pretty much killed it. So we've got this 5-inch special assessment document that I got out of the library and looked at. And now here it comes back again. There's a plan, a concept, we're told, that was done by Kaufman Associates and the airport people, that in part of which calls for now the closing of Airport Road from Namakagon Lane to Hospital Road, and the inclusion of hangar development on that west side, very, very, very close to the Namakagon River, something that we thought was probably over with in 2002. And now it's back in our face. We are adamant about, and we are talking to the National Park District, we are speaking with the DNR and other agencies that there should be no expansion of the airport west of the existing Airport Road. It was that way when I bought my lot in 1994, and there's absolutely nothing that's changed effectively that says that it should change, it should move in that direction. We have needs, we have desires. The desires right now are winning on the airport side, not needs. And that's the place we're at. We would prefer that you would do another environmental assessment if you feel it's necessary now, before you approve the plan for the engineers to move forward and start drawing up the removal of Airport Road, buying a piece of property across from Airport Road when you don't know whether it's going to pass another environmental assessment. Our recommendation would be that prior to moving forward on adopting this plan, concurring with the master plan, that if it shows that kind of a concept, that it would behoove you, it would be good for the community to do that environmental assessment first. Table the plan, do the environmental assessment, get the west side of Airport Road off the map, and then you can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wayne Williamson?
Wayne Williamson, 10842 North Riverside Road. One quick statement. We're very concerned about the Namakagon River. The airport keeps marching closer and closer and closer. We've got to protect the river. The airport needs to expand the other way. And that's all I want to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Gina?
Good evening, Jenny Chabek, 10363 on McLean Road. I served as chair of the ad hoc committee on the TRH ordinance. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you again regarding the TRH ordinance that you have before you this evening. Since the last board meeting, I have not received any communication from board members requesting additional information. Therefore, I will ask the chairman to allow for questions, answers, if I can help in any way to further explain the degree of thoroughness that went into the process to create this document. For example, over a year of deliberations, an ad hoc committee directing the process that included representatives with the best vested interests of the TRH businesses, a substantial commitment by county employees who require guidelines to make their jobs and doing their jobs simpler and more effective, and legal review and oversight. The ordinance is custom-made for Sawyer County's particular resources and constraints. There's a lot of people, including myself, that would like to see more or less restrictive elements included in the ordinance. I would like to remind everyone that this version passed the ad hoc committee by a vote of 8-2. And while I can't specifically speak for any of the members, it's my belief that the two were on the opposite sides of that spectrum. So I guess with that kind of numbers, you have to consider there's always going to be room one way or the other for people to be unhappy. The majority of the people were happy with this. Clearly, zoning, it continues to play an important role in identifying what situations still require the existing CUP process for a resort or a hotel in a residential neighborhood, as in the example that Ms. Zillmer provided to the board. And I want to thank Ms. Zillmer for that. The HHS licensing ordinance does not preclude or override the CUP process for resorts. Rather, it's a process that is simpler, more economical, and more specific strictly for TRH rooming houses, of which we have 600. Zoning, on the other hand, doesn't typically address behavioral issues or agent of the state responsibility that does fall under HHS. Please don't disregard the county residents who are living with the neighborhood disruption that short-term rentals bring to an otherwise peaceful Northwoods. These folks have been coming before the committee to say that they never planned on living in a water park or a hotel district. I don't blame them. Most importantly, Sawyer County homes and cabins are not designed for unlimited usage. Uncontrolled usage threatens to compromise what makes Sawyer County a great place to live and visit. I urge you all to support this ordinance as a necessary tool in our collective toolbox to protect our water, lakes, and wells as the priceless resources that they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ben Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Benjamin Kurtzwell, 16040 West Lane, again, Chairman for the Town of Hayward. First of all, my main concern with the TRH ordinance is that it's an HHS function of enforcement as opposed to doing it maybe through a conditional use permit through zoning, which I think other counties do. That's my main concern with that. About the airport expansion plan, there were a lot of things being thrown around at the Public Works Committee meeting last week. And I posed a question, 8 questions to the Bureau of Aeronautics, Matthew Messina, down in Madison. And he's working on a response to those. So far, he responded tonight at 6:15 to the answer to 1. And this was a claim made by the Kaufman Associates representative that the FAA owns the airport. He said that multiple times. That is not true. The county owns the airport and the land it's on, okay? Having a no action plan was stated as being de facto ceasing operation of the airport. That too is not accurate. I'm waiting on the rest of those answers. But if one thing said by Kaufman Associates is inaccurate or not exactly true, we have to do our due diligence on everything that was said. And there were a lot of things stated again that the FAA is forcing this expansion, that the county has their hands tied. I do not believe that is the case. So I would please recommend, also the Wild River Conservancy, I believe, has gotten involved. And I believe you all got emails from them today asking again for an environmental assessment before an individual option is taken. There's a lot of people who are really concerned about this, and I really think it needs to take its time and due diligence. I really feel that this should be remanded back to the Public Works Committee and have a more thorough review of all the plans and maybe make a recommendation this time. Because again, it was passed up to the county board with 3 of the 5 members present. There's a lot of homework that needs to go into this because there were a lot of statements being made that turn out not to be entirely accurate. I've also contacted a company who operates another airport. He found a lot of the stuff that was stated at that meeting very hard to believe, and he was the one who recommended I contact the Bureau of Aeronautics. Apparently, again, they're stated that we could not have a curfew at our airport. The person I talked to has been a commercial airline pilot for the last 20 years and says he flies into airports all the time with a curfew. So again, if one thing that was stated by Kaufman Associates is not completely accurate, that means we need to slow this down and make sure we do our due diligence on every item that was stated to us. Because it feels to me, the perception is that everyone feels we have our hands tied here. Now, have we actually looked behind us or try to move our hands to see if there's rope there or not? Because it feels to me like we're just accepting what is being said. So please, hold off on this, remand it back to the Public Works Committee if necessary, but we need to do our due diligence on all of the claims being made before we make a decision going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Doug Kurtzwell.
Douglas Kurtzwell, 11055W Arrow Road, Hayward, Wisconsin. I'm going to speak mostly, I guess, about the TRH proposal. It's limp-wristed and spineless and weak-willed, to say the best. There's no enforcement mechanism at all. There's no enforcement agency identified. In the budget, at least the line item budget that was in the public notice in the paper, there's a $35,000 increase for HHS, and they need at least 1 full-time and perhaps a 1.5 or 2 full-time positions in order to enforce this HHS ordinance. In fact, it shouldn't even be an HHS ordinance. It's a zoning issue. And even a member of the HHS committee, Ms. Pearson, I believe, pointed out on the record at the meeting, hey, this is like spot zoning. And even county out-of-town corporate council individual agreed, well, yeah, it is kind of spot zoning, but that's okay. Also, the TRH ad hoc committee meetings that I attended, especially the last several, there were a fair number of victims of TRHs, and they are the people who live next door, who have a significant portion of their net worth tied up in their home. And now they're living in the middle of a robot resort with no oversight. People there 24/7, 7 days a week, and no one in charge for the noise, for the free roaming dogs, for the unattended fires. It's a zoning issue. It really needs to be put in the hands of the zoning committee and the zoning department. And in fact, I've been told, and I haven't had the opportunity to confirm it yet, but I'm told that the TRH ordinance was basically crafted by the zoning administrator with the help of out-of-town council. And it's being passed off as an HHS ordinance. It's nonsense. It's crap. Just a comment or two about the airport type of thing, and this is something that's been rolling around in my mind for over 30 years. Sawyer County took over the airport from the city of Hayward, 30 or 40 years ago when the city couldn't afford to run it anymore. If there's county money going into it, that's coming from the taxpayers. That's all the people who live in Sawyer County or own property in Sawyer County. And some people might say, oh, it's a great benefit to the area, great benefit to the area. Well, how many of the people in the area or how few? I don't know of a single farmer down by Exland or a logger near Winter or Draper who benefits at all from the Sawyer County Hayward area airport. Also, owning an airplane, especially a jet, that's not a necessity for most of us who live here. And I think maybe that the thing ought to be run on a zero-cost basis to the county and the community and make it user paid for, user fees. Now, I believe the Kaufman associate or maybe some other guy from some other lobbyist company was at that meeting a week or two ago and indicated that one individual from west of here has a $20 million hangar. And I'm not sure how many hangars are there. There's about 25 leases, but I think some of the folks have multiple hangars. Total assessed value on the tax roll this year for all of those hangars is $3.2 million. That's a little short of the 20 that the one gentleman indicated the hangar was worth. The leases are quite an amalgamation of rates and everything. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. I think the whole airport thing really needs to go back to the drawing board and really dug into deeply. And people who are advocating one way or the other need to be asked some hard questions and give the board some hard facts. Also, another comment, airport, TRH, whatever. People I talk to who live in the the rural areas of Sawyer County seem very offended at the suggestion that any member of this board would ever say in a public session that they want Sawyer County, quote, to be more like the Dells, close quote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linda Zilmer. Ms. Zilmer, we got a couple minutes left, please.
Linda Zilmer, Edgewater resident, Edgewater property owner, Village of Birchwood resident. I want to start off with the first of three things. The easiest one being that at the Public Works Committee meeting, once I got past the airport master plan, there was 2 items listed on the agenda for action regarding the sale of a hangar from an existing hangar owner to a second one. What was not included on that agenda, but what was acted on, was allowing the current or previous owner to exercise the right for a 10-year extension of his lease. It was discussed at the meeting that the lease had expired. I was able to see a schedule of leases, and as far as I could tell, that lease expired in November of 2023. So that with that lease being expired, and the hangar being sold from one private individual to another, because I believe the county is going to waive its right of first refusal, I believe that lease should start under the new lease terms instead of an expired 10-year extension of the old lease. Does anybody have a question on that before I go to the next one? With regard to the airport master plan, I think most people have addressed the issues that are of concern, and number one is fact checking. I did send an email to county board members asking you to postpone action on that until things can be fact checked. And I also sent you some history and background of the significance of it'll be a 60th anniversary of a joint commission between Wisconsin and Minnesota to start working on the Wild Rivers, which became an official national park, an act to create national parks in 1968. And Washburn County highly promotes these wild rivers through their tourism, and we seem to take for granted a precious resource in our backyard. So please take time to understand the history and significance of protecting the resource. And finally, for the last thing, I agree with Jenny Chabek that the committee spent a lot of time looking at language for tourist rooming houses, that county staff and the public provided a lot of information for the committee to consider. But it all points to one thing: it should be a zoning ordinance. And while it was submitted that it's uniquely tailored to the circumstances and constraints of Sawyer County, I think pretty much most everybody in this room knows what the constraints are. And if the constraints were taken care of, this could be a zoning ordinance as most other municipalities deal with it. The work that the ad hoc committee came up with for conditions under the licensing ordinance could all be incorporated into a zoning ordinance amendment that specifies those criteria as conditions for a conditional use permit. And while Jenny mentioned the 8-2 vote, that was to just move it on. The ad hoc committee was not going to do anything more with it. And many members of that committee who voted to pass it on will tell you in their heart of hearts, including Mr. Neese, who has been involved in every ad hoc committee for 20-some years, is that he knows that there should be a zoning ordinance. So I would ask that you would take the hard work that was done, send it back to the zoning committee with direction to come up with an ordinance amendment to create an amendment that will have it as a conditional use permit with the recommended conditions. And the email example I sent you today is a perfect example of why only a conditional use permit will protect the neighbors and balance rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 9, consider approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, September 17th.
I'll make a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes.
I second that motion.
Mr. Rosowski, second. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 10, Public Works Committee, Chair Report. Mr. Hellwig.
For October 2024, along with the routine building and equipment maintenance, the following maintenance projects are in process or were completed in September. Courthouse, in addition to routine building and grounds maintenance, staff responded to and completed 48 service requests, 57 reactive work orders, and 13 preemptive work orders in the past 30 days. They built and installed 2 workstations in the treasurer's office, started collaborating with an outside company to digitize all material, safety and global data sheets, installed 3 new exterior doors and transitions. Hayward Roofing installed a metal roof on the transitions building, completed miscellaneous interior renovations at the dog pound. The Sheriff's Department maintenance assisted Andrew Rasmussen and Sons Incorporated with replacing all gate valves in the 1975 portion of the jail with ball valves. Highway Department installed all new service access doors in the cold storage building winter. Highway Commissioners report, crews have continued patching and shouldering problem areas throughout the county. This will be ongoing throughout the fall. Crews started brushing County Highway H from County Highway CC to County Highway 2770. They have been clearing all vegetation and trees back to the row. County crack sealing has been completed for the year. We still have some crack sealing to finish for the town of Meadowbrook and State Highway 48. Road painting was recently completed on County Highway B, NN, N, and E. We still have to complete County Highway C and D when paving is completed. Paving operations have started on County HCC from State Highway 48 to Magellan Lane. Once this is completed, the crew will move to County Highway D from State Highway 27 to Lund Road. County mowing operations are almost completed. County Highway 00 and T are left to complete. County Highway C Bridge update. The deck pour is planned for October 2nd. Project is moving along very well. Completion date is scheduled for November 6th. The ARIP application has been submitted for County Highway C from State Highway 48 to State Highway 2770. The commissioners signed the contract for replacement of shingles on both state salt domes in the Hayward Brothers and also state shed in winter. This work will start in October and finish in November. We have the public involvement meetings this month, October 16th at the town of Weirgore, and for the County Highway Bridge, and October 23rd at the County Boardroom for County Highway E. Sawyer County Airport Management Report for October. September was busier than usual with continuation of summer weather. 2025 runway project plans are starting to come into focus. Spring road ban restrictions and rain days are the 2 biggest hurdles that the project faces. A 10-day notice to proceed will be given to the contractors once road bans are lifted, and the project has a 30 working day schedule. Road bans have come off as early as 4/4/24, as late as 5/14 in 2018. Assuming the worst, the airport would be shut down all of June and most of July. This last June, it seemed to rain nearly every day, so fingers crossed. We had a minor setback on some FAA funding for the navigational aids as part of the runway project. Should be issued in the long term. The master plan is entering its final stages as we stencil in projects needs at the airport year after year. Excuse me. This final phase of the process is accumulation of years' worth planning. The new security cameras tied in with the sheriff's department are working well, and the internet is holding up well. October 2nd to the 4th, the annual Wisconsin Airport Management Association Conference is occurring in Madison. October 1st, Wisconsin BOA sent an email saying individual airport reports should be available by end of month. A hangar at the airport is on the agenda for approval for sale and transfer of lease. The individual purchasing the hangar is a longtime airport user with multiple aircraft and deep roots in the aviation community. We'll be lucky to add him to our field. Special thanks to the outgoing hangar owner, for sharing his selling experience. Once the transaction is finalized, I believe we will receive a list of the numerous individuals that reached out inquiring to purchase said hangar. Mr. Alvarado will have more comments on the public works. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Helwig. Letter B, Airport Master Plan Update, Mr. Alvarado.
So I think you've heard the update or have had the opportunity to read the Chapter 5 update to the master plan draft or review the meeting from last week. Where we're at with the plan is that the consultant has prepared a recommended development alternative that identifies a proposed layout or development of the airport in the future. And this is really looking 10 years plus down the road for the airport needs based on the traffic it's getting, the type of airplanes that are coming in, what's projected in the future for those types of activities, as well as meeting the services or demands that an airport would have, including the hangar sites. So it's came to Public Works, the Chapter 5 specifically recommended development alternative, because at this point, they want the county to, I'll use the word approve going forward with a proposed development alternative so they can complete the rest of the master plan work, which includes some environmental review, capital improvement planning, based on the design alternative. So that's, you think you've heard public comment. This is potential of shifting the runway in the future, closing Airport Road to allow for hangar development, some airside and landside improvements, potential acquisition of property. There is no forced acquisition of homes, but the consultant did say that if homes become available, it would be a good opportunity for the county to consider acquiring those. In general, I would just offer that I think 20 or 30 years ago, it would have been a good alternative for the county to look at property acquisition throughout the years as the airport grew and properties became available. But I would say that's going forward. That's not a bad position for the county to take if we continue to operate an airport like we do. So yeah, they're looking for, the Public Works Committee looked at the development alternative. They essentially sent it on to the county board for consideration without a recommendation to approve it. But before the consultant can move ahead with additional master plan work, they want approval for the recommended development alternative or some other option. I'll offer to the chair that Mike D'Amico from Kaufman Associates is online. Carl Kemper from Becker Hoppy is in the room. It's up to you how much you want to involve them in the discussion. But I can do my best to answer questions, but obviously they're going to be able to give you a little bit cleaner feedback than I can.
Mr. McGarver.
Yeah, I'd like either the gentleman online or here. Some of the comments there are basically saying we're being lied to. I'm not sure that's the case. I don't believe that's the case, but I think it's important that at least you have the opportunity to address those comments.
Can I offer up one comment before they talk? You're not, I would say you're not being lied to. I don't believe we're being lied to. I would say you could interpret the information differently, and I'll specifically address the ownership of the airport. The title to the land is in the county's name, always has been since the county took over. However, we are encumbered by federal grant dollars. So we can't just decide that we're gonna put houses out there. We can't, we're limited as to what we can do based on the FAA guidelines. We sign off on the grants and insurances. Is it 31, Carl, 31 rules?
39.
There's 39 different elements of our responsibilities that we have to the FAA. So while it is titled in our name, we're really partners. We're the sponsor of the airport. We've been granted the authority to operate an FAA airport by the FAA, and we're part of the national airport system. So so it's the same information, but depending on how you want to twist that, you could say that do we own it? Yeah, it's titled to us in the Register of Deeds. Can we just do what we want? No, we cannot. We are responsible to the FAA.
And Andy, can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yes.
Chair recognize him,
Okay.
make sure you're okay with?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you.
This is Mike Dimitrico with Kaufman Associates, and I want to apologize to Benji just up front. The language I used as FAA ownership was simple vernacular as far as the rights and control of property, not as physical ownership. It is true 100%, and he is correct, that the Register of Deeds shows Sawyer County as the owner of the airport. The money paid for the land was gifted by the federal government, which gives you an encumbrance in perpetuity for the remainder of the world that this will be FAA's controlling authority over the property. So while the actual deed title is to the county, you still must adhere to FAA grant assurance and the rules and regulations put forth on you, with the exception, as we mentioned in the meeting, if you desire to withhold or release yourself of that obligation by asking for the sale of the airport. Outside of that, you must follow their grant assurances and the ties that give you the responsibility to develop the airport as is. So all we are trying to accomplish in this master plan is to educate those that have the controlling entity to ensure that they're doing things correctly. And as we've, again, I think, been over this many, many times, you have a responsibility to allow for the development of the airport. You are not required to develop the airport. And so there are a lot of things that I think that are misunderstood, but the reality of it is we do not believe that you must build anything that we're showing on the airport. We're suggesting that the private developers that already want to build hangars, there is demand for that. You already have the business jet aircraft that have already put you into a group C and D category. That's happened already. We are simply helping you respond to that demand in a way that does not put you in jeopardy of any sort of litigation for not responding appropriately based upon that federal obligation. That is truly all we're trying to do. And we also, I believe, as Carl's going to also, I think, talk about, been very cognizant of the environmental sensitivities of all of this. We certainly do not believe that any of this plan is going to be easy to implement. We're simply trying to help you do what you need to do going forward. And that will be a long process, by the way. There will be environmental assessments. There will be plenty of opportunity to speak into this as we go. This is the very first part of any development that will take years and years and years. You are simply at the very beginning. This is nowhere near complete. And so at that, I'm going to go ahead and let Carl speak to what he wants to say as well.
Good, Carl.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. Carl Kemper, president of Becker Hoppy Associates out of Wausau. Also an airport engineer, so we're supporting Kaufman Associates to provide more technical engineering support as part of the master plan. I've been working at the Sawyer County Airport for about 10 years since I graduated from college. It was one of the first projects that I was put on, so lived in your community for a summer, enjoyed fishing on the Namakagon River. I am familiar with your community and the airport, and you know, the great things that it provides. With regard to, like Mike said, with environmental considerations and also taking into account public feedback that we received during the 2 public involvement meetings that we held during the development of this master plan. You know, we heard some feedback from the public that we listened to, and we, you know, a lot of the same feedback that has been expressed tonight during the public comment period. So, you know, there was discussion tonight again about the 9 acres of property along Namakagon Lane. When we first brought an alternative forward, one of the alternatives, actually many of the alternatives that we brought forward initially to discuss with the community, we were showing detailed hangar layout on that 9 acres along Namakagon Lane. And we heard that if at all possible, the neighborhood would appreciate if the county could avoid putting hangars there. So with this recommended development, we have come up with a plan, a sequencing that could potentially never require hangars to be developed on that piece of land. We have come up with a phasing plan to develop hangars in other places, get the runway shifted, and then open up much more property for hangar development. So we listened and we modified our plan to take their considerations into account. Similarly, regarding the closure of Airport Road, we initially had showed relocation of Airport Road as an alternative, and what was discussed as being proposed as a preferred alternative during the first public involvement meeting. We heard that there was opposition to that some of the neighborhoods did not want, or the neighborhood, Namakagon Lane neighborhood, did not want Airport Road moved closer to their house. They wanted less traffic past their neighborhood. And so we came up with a solution to close Airport Road between Namakagon Lane and Hospital Road to accomplish just that. We talked about at the last public information meeting, after we heard that closure of Airport Road could be a concern, we came up with the idea that really at this point, like Mike is saying, this is a concept, this is a plan that will be carried through to environmental analysis, to a very detailed environmental analysis. And at that point, maybe that would be the time to determine whether to close Airport Road or relocate Airport Road based on environmental considerations and public, you know, more public feedback, more public coordination, resource agency coordination, things like that. And that's perfectly within our rights at this point. We're just simply showing concepts on a piece of paper to give us something to then go forward with and evaluate, look into the cost of. But right now, this is a concept that meets the needs of the community very well. And so it is worth taking a deeper dive into and investigating more, you know, investigating further. I'll kind of make an analogy. I think it was one of our generals back during one of the wars has a famous statement, and it's that a plan is nothing more than something to confidently deviate from. Okay, so that's what a plan is. It's nothing more than something to confidently deviate from. You have to start somewhere. You have to put something on paper so you can do the studies that are being discussed, and that's what we're proposing here. There are many other comments that were made tonight that were not factual and wrong, and I don't know that I want to dive into all of those. I do have them written down here. I will say the last public information meeting as part of the last Public Works Committee meeting, Mike's introduction, you know, summarizing chapter 5, I actually listened to it again last night. There's not a single thing that Mike said that I believe is not factual or incorrect. And so I agree with Andy. I don't believe that Mike has said anything that is incorrect. Thank you.
Ms. Hessel.
So I just want to reiterate, this is a plan. We're being proactive on what could or could not happen based on the needs of our airport. And so it's not a project. We're not allotting any money to it. This is just a concept. And I think that that's just what I want to make clear, if we could.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the development, to go forward with the development alternative plan. I'm stating that correctly.
Yeah, it's the recommended development alternative.
All right.
Or recommended development plan as it's headed on that sheet.
I had my words
Yeah.
not in proper order, but
So we have a motion by Mr. Righeimer to approve the concept moving forward.
I'm gonna second that concept.
So the second by Mr. Newman. We have a motion by Mr. Righeimer, second by Mr. Newman to approve the concept of the plan. They have a lot of work to do when the plan gets approved. And I want to remind everybody that next year is the year the airport runway is going to be resurfaced. When when the federal government spends money on resurfacing that runway, they're not going to be in too big a hurry to change things after that. Questions, comments, Mr. Newman, or excuse me, Mr. Schuman, sorry.
In discussion, is that approving this airport management agreement?
No, that's next
Oh,
item.
okay.
Okay. So, and this is just the development plan. So the consultant, if this is approved, the consultants will take this, complete the work on the master plan. They will then bring the master plan back to the board. And at that point, you'll, as a board, have to accept it, but you're still not obligating yourself to what's in the plan.
Any other discussion? Yes, you still got more?
I do, but I'll wait for someone else.
You're it, my friend.
Okay. Does this include the environmental study then?
They will do them steps after this.
How do we know they'll do it?
Can I speak to that? This is Mike Dimiturgo again with Kaufman. We actually have an environmental overview portion already contained within Chapter 5. As we said in our public workshop, the FAA will not pay for, nor will they participate in an environmental assessment for a project that doesn't exist. So if you are asking them to do an environmental assessment for a concept, they will literally simply respond by saying they will not participate. So what we're trying to help the public understand is to request an environmental assessment on a concept. The answer will be you will pay for it and you will look at it yourself. The reality is an environmental assessment is done on action. That's when, as mentioned on one of the board members, when you actually have a project, you will ask for an environmental assessment. At that time, you will proceed with a purpose and need that will then go through alternatives that will be vetted for financial, environmental, and other reasons with public involvement. It will then be approved or not. At this point, there is no reason for, nor will there ever be, at least on the federal side. Again, you could do it on your own, but on the federal side, they will not engage in an environmental assessment just simply for a plan.
Any other questions?
Can I request a roll call vote?
Yes, you can. Any other questions? County Clerk? Roll call vote.
Ms. Hessel.
Yes.
Mr. Newman.
Yes.
Mr. Helwig.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Karianen.
Yes.
Mr. Schuman.
Yes.
Mr. Savitsky.
Yes.
Mr. Van Etten.
Yes.
Mr. Righeimer.
Yes.
Mr. Haney. Mr. Kinsley.
Yes.
Mr. Buckholz. Mr. Sorowski.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank the audience for all their time also. Letter C, Andy?
So there's two items related to the Ron Courthouse hangar sale. There's an amendment to the lease and extension, so based on the public comment, it is correct. So there was a 20-year lease with a 10-year option in it, and the 10 years was up last year. We did not catch it. The hangar owner did not catch it either and asked for the extension, so when the sale came up, we discovered it. Based on the fact that we did not catch it, I didn't see any reason to hold that against the hangar owner. So we are granting the 10-year extension under the terms that were in the lease, and that is item A. The amendment is the extension. And then the second action would be to approve the resolution, which is the transfer hang on. It is the resolution waiving the right of first refusal and approving the assignment of the lease from Ron Courthouse to James Robert Fox. So just as a recap, I think everybody's aware of this. We own the land at the airport. The hangar owners own the buildings. And so Mr. Courthouse has sold his building, or will sell his building upon the transfer of the assignment of the lease to James Robert Fox. And then Mr. Fox takes over the remainder of the lease.
Ms. Hessel.
Do you want action on both A and B or just B?
Do A, then B.
Okay. All right, I will make a motion to amend, to the amendment of the lease extension.
I have a motion by Ms. Hessel to approve the amendment of the lease.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Helwig. Any discussion? This is for the amendment of the lease. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is letter B.
Right, which is the resolution, which in our leases, we have the right to purchase the hangars if we so choose. Otherwise, we can waive our first right when there is a transfer. This resolution waives our right and then assigns, which now is the amended lease, from Ron Courthouse to James Robert Fox.
Mr. Helwig.
You just mentioned that we have the right to, what was that called? Yeah, first refusal. Is that on every,
We have that option every hangar, yes.
hangar? Thank you, sir.
Great.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion approving that resolution waiving our right of first refusal.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Schuman, second by Mr. Van Etten to approve the waiver of the right of approval. Appraisal. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Letter C. We have to approve the,
No, that was just a,
we have to approve the sale.
we already did.
All right, good enough.
So that covers all items for number C.
All right. Letter D, airport manager contract with Hayward Aviation. Mr. Alvarado.
Yes, so the airport, or the county, excuse me, has had a management contract with Hayward Aviation for the last 5 years. That contract is up for either renewal or not renewing it, but working with the Public Works Committee and working with Derek Leslie, owner of Hayward Aviation, we would like to proceed with a 5-year, essentially a 5-year extension of that management contract. What's hard copy in front of you, also uploaded in the packet, is the amended and restated airport management agreement. So essentially what this is a document that leaves all of the current details of the management agreement in place, except that we did adjust the compensation. The monthly compensation will be increasing. We negotiated a 10% increase for the first year and then 2.5% for the remaining 4 years. The compensation was a 10% increase in the first year and then 2.5% for years 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Mr. Helwig.
I would like to make a motion to approve the amended and restated airport management agreement
Extension.
for 5 years.
I'll second.
So motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Newman to approve the extension for 5 years with a rate increase. Any discussion?
I do. Is the airport self-sustaining?
No, it's not.
How much county support goes to the airport? All these payments to him every month
Yep.
come out of our budget?
They do, so I'm gonna give it
Then I
the
got
top of
another
my head,
question.
we budget about $130,000 to $140,000 in expenses every year, and then we bring in $60,000 to $70,000 in revenue. So it's not self.
Is the revenue through fuel sales to?
So we have, so we pay out this expense as a management agreement, that's part of our expenses. And we do snowplow removal and cutting of the grass. We have a separate agreement with the FBO, which is again Hayward Aviation. So we get 12 cents off of every gallon of fuel that's sold there and 15% on all the revenues. So like he owns a hangar, or Hayward Aviation owns a hangar. He rents space in the hangar to planes. we get 15% of those hangar rentals. He provides catering. He'll, you have a plane that's leaving, you wanna have food on it, he'll arrange catering. We get a cut of that. He has car rentals, we get 15% of that. And then the other revenues we get are primarily the hangar leases, the land leases for all of the hangars on site.
But we don't make enough of a cut to make it self-sustaining.
No. And I, would just offer up that if you look at any other GA aviation airports, especially in this part of the state, whether it's Superior, Ashland, Phillips, they're all levying well over $100,000 in taxpayer money to run their airports. I don't know of a GA airport that is self-sustaining.
I know in the past, before we did these contracts, it was costing the county over $100,000 a year. We've got it down to about 70 now, and it's on its way down. I think that's a positive, moving in a positive direction. So we have a motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Newman. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Number 11, Health and Human Services Board. Ms. Wilson.
Well, since I left my detailed report at home on the table, I'll give you an abbreviated report, much to your advantage. Let's see, our meeting was October 8th. The LCO report, Mr. Schuman provided a verbal update and began with an introduction of the new LCO Health Center Director, Scott Johnson. He gave us some information about the new medical building that's due to open in February, as long as the furniture gets delivered in December and IT gets installed in January. They have a staff of over 120 people. And Mr. Schuman also advised that LCO is designing their own tourist rooming homes ordinance, and they will begin enforcing that in the summer of 2025. The Senior Resource Center has assigned committees, and the Finance Committee will meet next week to discuss the financing of the roof. We talked about the tourist rooming house ordinance coming up tonight. Adult long-term care, a report was given that there are 16 adult long-term referrals, 5 dementia care consults, 27 new benefit specialist referrals, and 42 open adult protective services. They're revisiting their guardianship policy. And behavioral health, the CLTS program is growing in Sawyer County as well as other counties, and the state has said we must not have a waiting list for this program. Mental health costs report were created to help identify potential costs. Mr. Bodo reviewed the crisis contact report and also gave us costs in both short and long-term placements. The report showed an average of 30-plus crisis contacts per month. Mr. Alvarado will work with the Sheriff's Department to consider developing a transport MOU with other local law enforcement agencies because of the expensive cost of transporting our youth. Child Protective Services and Youth Justice. We're looking at starting a diversion program with potential grant funds, trying to have workers going into homes more often to help maintain consistencies. If we get a second grant, we'll hire a therapist. Economic report said that there were 1,088 food share recipients. The consortium had 9,116 calls with 96 to 99% answer rate. Public health provided, Ms. McCallum advised that the school flu clinics were underway, and the community health stakeholder meeting will be held at Flat Creek to discuss preliminary results from the survey and get input from stakeholders. We had a sheltering exercise on 9/11. We had 40 participants. when they registered, they were given a little card to indicate what they were bringing to the shelter, like dementia, a person with a gun, a person with a dog, a person, so that everyone had to act out their scenario so that we tried to cover everything we might see that day. Or in a sheltering, real sheltering exercise. September 20th to 21st was the Walk for Tomorrow, which was for mental health and suicide prevention, and there were 167 participants. On September 25th, we had the Clean Sweep, and we collected 96 pounds of medication. Let's see. And that's all I have for this abbreviated report.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you.
Mr. Letter B, Mr. Alvarado.
So last month, we presented the tourist rooming house ordinance that had been worked on by the ad hoc committee for about over a year, maybe a year and a few months. That went to the Health and Human Services Board in September. They made a motion there to send it to the county board but without a recommendation for approval. So we gave you the ordinance last month along with a presentation on I guess the finer points of it, as well as background data and some frequently asked question information. The tricky part is that coming out of the Human Services Board without a recommendation, we didn't have a resolution prepared for that. I am offering up, and it's been in hard copy in front of you, and noted that we'd have it for tonight, a resolution, so that if the board wants to act on the tourist rooming house ordinance, you have a resolution to put on the floor to effectively do that. The resolution is nothing more than memorializing the decision of the Human Services Board. So the whereas is summarized that the ad hoc committee was formed in May. On August 22nd, the ad hoc committee voted to send the draft ordinance back to the Human Services Board, and then on September 10th, the HHS Board conducted a public hearing for the ordinance, discussed it, and voted to forward the resolution to the county board for consideration with no recommendation, and that you were presented with this information last month. It goes through the normal recitals we have for adoption of an ordinance, and that the additional actions would be that the Health and Human Services Department and Health Officer are authorized to take all steps to ensure that the Sawyer County Board action decision set forth herein is completed, and that if there's any conflict with state law, that state law shall control should be the priority if there's a conflict. Beyond that, I don't know that I have anything more to offer. I think a lot of the public comments are I don't disagree with them. A lot of that was discussed in the ad hoc as to why it should went the route of a Health and Human Services, or excuse me, a public health ordinance rather than a conditional use process. We outlined that in the frequently asked questions that was provided to you. I want to reiterate one of the questions from before that in the budget, and that's been presented to you, it does not include anything to do with this ordinance. I've said that if this ordinance or any ordinance actually related to tourist rooming houses makes it through to adoption, that would come back with a proposal on the fee structure for those licenses, and then request for additional staff, because we'd have to, in my eyes, do both. And that would be a decision of the board to do that, to adopt the fee schedule and approve the additional position or positions to implement and enforce the ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, Andy, but your intent is that it be budget neutral, correct?
Yes, that's what the
You will look at that and make sure that.
What I
And
bring
then
back
wanna
to you
bring
would
up,
cover the expenses, yes.
There's a correction to this, because we left out a signature line for Mr. Savitsky, who's a Health and Human Services Board member. So we'd have to add that in.
We would have to edit that.
We gotta get Marshall on here.
Ms. Essen.
Make a motion to approve the ordinance brought forth for the tourist rooming housing short-term rentals.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Ms. Wilson to approve Any other discussion?
Can I just offer up maybe
Yes.
make it be more appropriate if you want? It'd be a little cleaner for us, honestly, if you bring the resolution on the floor and approve the resolution, because the resolution is adopting the ordinance as the attachment.
I will do so. I will make a motion. So I have to withdraw my previous motion. Sorry, I went through all of this down at the Counties Association. I have to withdraw my previous motion and make the motion to approve the resolution.
You have to withdraw
Regarding-
first.
Sorry.
You withdraw the second. Thank
I
you
withdraw.
kindly. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. So now I make the motion to approve the resolution brought forth regarding the tourist rooming house and short-term rentals.
I'll second that.
So a motion by Ms. Hessel, and second by Ms. Wilson to approve the ordinance. Any comments? Excuse me.
I got one question. When that did not come through normally and it was brought in the way, didn't there have to be a 2/3 vote because it didn't come through the normal way?
It's been considered by the committee. Well, actually, I believe that's the answer. It's already been to the committee and come back. So if the committee hadn't considered it, then we would need a 2/3 vote.
But the committee didn't vote to bring it forward to the
Right.
board. It did the last time, but this time it did not.
You sent it to the board at the September meeting without a recommendation for approval.
Right, and then it went back.
Nope,
Okay.
no.
State here.
I think council's online, I hope.
I am.
You wanna make sure we're doing this correctly?
Yes, you're doing it correctly. Yeah, very good question though, in terms of, whether the board rule requiring the 2/3 vote is triggered. And in this situation, it's not, because the Health and Human Services Committee did indeed consider the TRH ordinance at its September meeting, and then it voted to forward it to the county board with no recommendation for approval of denial. By virtue of that action, it is now arriving to you, the board, for consideration. So that is the permitted process under, I believe it's Rule 6.4 of your board rules.
Okay.
Now it's open for discussion.
Yes.
Okay, I have the same reservations that I've said before. There's several things when we're starting to talk about governing people that own homes that pay their taxes and the way that this is going. My biggest thing is the same thing that I brought up to Rebecca last time, and I think the answer was that most of the other counties are going through zoning. And the HHS, if we're gonna try and be neutral, I get that, but I don't understand how we can. By the time we pay the new employees, we pay the benefits, we're creating a problem that then we're gonna hire people to enforce the problem that we didn't have a problem to begin with. And then the other issue I have with that is HHS is over budget. We can't even pay the bills now, so to speak, for the things. So if it went through zoning, it would make more sense to me. The other things that I have a problem with, if I'm a homeowner and I'm gonna rent my property, that then it's no tents, no campers, no fireworks. I have to post my name and phone number so everybody can see it. There's just too many things that I think we need to stay out of, and that's just my opinion.
Ms. Hessel.
So correct me if I'm wrong, most of the other counties don't have a state employee. That's why it goes through zoning, correct? Okay, I'm just asking, and the audience doesn't need to participate, but I'm just asking for clarification, so.
Yeah, I don't have a breakdown of, some are state agents, some are not. Some go through zoning, some it's a conditional use permit, some it's just a special permit or a similar permit to what we're proposing, but it's done through their zoning office. And there are some that do it through their public health office as a license or permit. I would say the criteria that we have in the ordinance for the things that Mr. Van Etten just mentioned. If it was done through zoning, if it was done through this conditional use permit, those could be conditions on the permit, or actually usually are, or there'd be conditions of a license or permit issued by zoning, even if it wasn't conditional use.
And then follow up, most of the counties that I've talked to that use zoning don't have the volume that we have. So then therefore, it's not such a wait, it would be a tremendous wait process.
That was, and I should point out, we do have other county staff on Zoom. I told them to Zoom in rather than sit in the audience for, I didn't know how long. So if you have questions, I can refer to them as well. But that was one of the discussions at the ad hoc when we talked about conditional use, is that we do have 600 of these properties right now. If you did a conditional use, that's 600 public hearings, 600 permits, 600 times you have to notice all the property owners within 300 feet. So there is a time or a constraint there on issuing a conditional use permit through zoning at least. Now, you could do some other permit through zoning as well, but it would be, I think, similar to what we're talking about going through public health with. Does that answer your question? Yeah. And cost-wise, it's the same scenario, whether we do it through zoning or through public health. We will need staff to implement it and enforce it. And my proposal will be to make sure we cover that cost by whatever license or permit fee that we implement.
Ms. Wilson.
In response to Mr. Van Etten's critique, I think having this ordinance is really important for people that are thinking about having a short-term rental. They can look at what we expect of them. No fireworks, no dogs at large, blah, blah, blah. So that they can make an informed decision of what it really is involved if you're going to have a home that you're going to rent, to have someone there that can respond to any complaints. And I wanted to commend the ad hoc committee for the work that they've done. They've listened to the people, they've listened to the short-term rental owners, and I think that they've come up with a pretty doggone good ordinance.
Okay. Any other discussion, Mr. Elway?
Say this is approved and it goes into effect. Now we have, like you said, 600 locations that have these. How is it going to work for us getting these people to do the permits? Is someone going to go out to each one of these locations? I'm sure we have a list. Or are they on their own supposed to come in and do this requirement, this permit?
I would offer that one of the reasons we went this route, the ad hoc committee's gone this route, is because public health, which this would be a health human service ordinance administered by public health, already is the state agent. They already issue state licenses to all of these properties. So they already have a relationship with them. They already issue them an annual permit. And the intention of this is to be a piggyback right on top of that state permit. So by having a local permit, it'll be done at the same time, hopefully, as the state permit. We already are doing the on-sites. There will most likely be a one-time inspection fee and then a renewal every year after that. And what else was I gonna offer? But by having a local permit, we have some ability to enforce and regulate them if there are problems. Really, with the state permit, we're issuing based on the state license requirements. Now we have local license requirements.
I don't recall, was there a fee for this permit?
Not at this time. That's what I've said. I didn't bring one forward now until we have an ordinance and we know what we're going to be doing. And then once it's adopted, we've already talked internally about time, how much it's going to take, and how much staff we anticipate needing to implement and enforce, which will drive the fee structure so that we cover our expenses.
Mr. Alvarado, I'd just like to say there is a fee already in place for the agent in the state. I wasn't sure what Mr. Hellwig was asking, but it would be an additional fee for the county license.
Correct.
Yeah, the past 6 years I lived next to one of these on a road with 5 houses on it, half a mile long, never had an issue. Bought a house last year on a lake, house, I don't know, I can throw a football at it. Never had an issue with anybody. They come up every weekend. They've been over on our property, used my dock. I don't own the water. I don't mind it. They've been very nice. They're friendly people. They're coming up on vacation. What this is, more government, more government, more government, rules and regulations. Right now, there's no teeth in this game. If we write an ordinance, or if this passes, what happens? Are they gonna get an ordinance? Who's gonna enforce it? Right now on this board, there's 30 years of law enforcement, Jeff Haney and I, and Doug, you can probably speak on behalf of it too. I've never been called to any of these houses before. There's 13 of them in the city of Hayward. I've never been called to any of them. Supervisor Haney is, I don't know, you can speak for yourself, I guess, but he was here for 20-something years, and same amount of issues at these houses, about minimal, nothing. So I just worry, I guess, in the long run. My neighbors confronted me about this because they heard it was coming up. They are looking to retire in 10, 15 years, and they bought this house, and a house up here is going for $500,000, $750,000. And they're hoping that these Airbnbs and VRBOs are gonna help pay for this property so they can retire on time and live out their life up here in vacation land. When this came up, they're worried now, how does it, if we get declined permits, or if we get a few bad renters right away, are we at risk of losing this house because we can't afford it anymore and that we won't be able to retire up here? A lot of issues that I see with it. I don't think it's finalized. And I do worry that people might abuse this too, maybe people who don't like their neighbors or anything. I also wonder if there's a conflict of interest for people who are gonna vote on this tonight who might be making money off of short-term rentals, who might be on this board.
Thank you, Mr. Haney.
In my 23 years working at the Sheriff's Department, I never went to a Airbnb for any kind of complaint. I mean, I went to plenty of complaints for fireworks, dogs at large, you name it. And these are just normal houses. These ain't just Airbnbs or whatever. And the same thing is, having permission or wanting to go into these houses and see how many people are in a house. If we wanted to go into a house as law enforcement, we needed a warrant to go into a house. To me, that's a dangerous job for who's ever gonna be doing this, because they're not law enforcement. They don't carry a weapon or anything else. And then as far as putting your name and address or name and phone number out in front of your house, now you're telling people that like to break into houses, hey, this place might not be rented out this week or next week. To me, you're opening it up for more burglaries and everything else like that, but that's why I'm kind of against it.
Ms. Hessel.
So I was on the ad hoc committee, and I understand the concerns that everybody has, but I think the most important thing that we try to do is not focus on the civil issues. So that's a law enforcement, but it was more of the room capacity. So it's the septic issue. So the room capacity was what people were violating the most of. We had CJ, I cannot think of Damasky. We had him on, and he said that his rentals in Washburn County follow the same rules. And so he was in favor of this because they follow the same rules as Washburn County. So since they're so close together, he felt that this was a good uniform, for the two counties that are so close, so that people that have rentals in both don't have to wonder what was on one side of the county versus the other. So what we talked mostly about was not the civil issues, not the fireworks, not the people getting out of control. It was more of the septic, and it was the room capacity, because right now people in a lot of places, maybe not the ones that are by you, but they're putting 20 people in a 2-bedroom home, things like that, that Matt, our state agent right now, brought to our attention, that there's a lot of violators that way, and they didn't have any room to write them up or to take away, their rental capacity. So that's what we're trying to do, is regulate that, to be respectful of, if you're advertising that you have a house with 4 bedrooms, you can only have 2 people per room plus 2. You can't have 20 people per room. So it wasn't necessarily a civil issue that we're trying to violate. We're not trying to take away anybody's personal property rights, but it does have to be to where we're being respectful of what is the capacity of that, what is the state rules, and how can we implement those locally.
Thank you. Mr. Haney.
I had opportunity to talk to somebody that owns a septic or, for pumping out septic, and they have told me in all these years, they have not gone to one complaint of a septic problem from a rental in all the years that they've had their septic business.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I also think that, just like the building we're sitting in now, did we expect to have all the staff that it takes to maintain this building? Like a program like this, are we ready to hire more people on payroll to enforce this ordinance, I guess? I think the state is still going forward and trying to draft something across the entire state. Is that correct, Andy? No, they're not? Okay. All right.
What you've heard about if statewide is they're looking at and if Eric Wellauer is on, he can answer this, but it's more like the septic code, not TRHs themselves.
Any other discussion? Yes.
Marshall, in response to your scenario about the people that might buy a house and want to rent it out, any complaints have to be substantiated and they have to be significant for anyone to have their license looked at. I talked to Matt McKay extensively about this, and he said that rarely is someone going to lose their license unless it's a substantial problem. And they should rightly lose it if there are a number of complaints consistently. But these people, they don't have to worry about losing their license if they have rules and regulations that people know and expect when they come and rent that house.
Any other question? We have a motion and a second. Yes.
I just wanted to address one thing so it's clear. With nowhere in the ordinance does it allow our staff just to go walk into any of these properties. You're right, that is a violation of their personal rights. It does allow them to do, go make a site visit, but if they're not welcome, they can't just trespass. It's no different than what we already have as state agent, a license. As agents of the state, we grant those licenses. The language in this is the same as the rights that our staff have as agents that issue those state licenses. So.
Yes.
Can I request a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Yes.
Something that's gonna bother me in the past, on these roll call votes, shouldn't we have our mics on when she says who they are? Who you're speaking to, and we say yes or no. To me, what's a roll call vote? What use is it if it's not recorded? So.
It's recorded as the clerk writes down what you voted. So, no more. We'll go ahead and have the vote. County Clerk?
Yes.
Mr. Kinsley,
Yes.
Mr. Sarowski,
Yes.
Mr. Newman,
Yes.
Mr. Schuman,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Carrigan,
Yes.
Mr. Howard, Ms. Hessel,
Yes.
Mr. Savitsky,
No.
Mr. Van Etten,
No.
Mr. Haney.
No.
We have 3 nays and remaining yays.
Thank you. Number 12, Public Safety Committee Chair Report. Turn your mic on.
Okay, we called to order by the chair, Mr. Buckholz, at 9 a.m. on 3rd of October. Public comments from Linda Zilmer, Circuit Court judges, we didn't have a report from Circuit Court or the judge. So Clerk of Courts, they did report, provide a report. Sheriff's report, he did not speak at that time. Patrol report, written report was provided by and reviewed by Lieutenant Ripzinski. 964 calls for service were listed with 220 crashes to date. Deputy Mike Meyer Sale will be graduating the CVT-CLE Academy program October 6th. He will begin training patrol FTO shortly thereafter. Jail report, a written report was provided and reviewed showing the average daily population being 77, the unemployment rate being 71%. Communication Center Emergency Management was out. They have written reports provided and reviewed. Dispatchers recently had mutual aid box alarm system training. Mindshare radio consoles for dispatch had arrived, and GenCom is in the process of getting the specs corrected for Sawyer County. Communication System Specialist report, project view was provided, and the system seems to be running well at this time. Overview was a review of the system that we looked at this past summer. A resolution to allow the county to proceed with the radio system improvement was presented by Mr. Alvarado. Motion was made. Mr. Hill approved to approve. Second by Mr. Sorelski. Motion carried. Code enforcement. So we'll be discussing that resolution in a moment. Code enforcement specialist, Ms. Olson provided a verbal update. She is now officially certified as a code enforcement officer. Highest number of calls continue to be at large dogs, excuse me. She's also beginning to address the TRH enforcement issues. Child Support Department, written report provided. Total support due for the month of August was $1,328,058.32. The amount collected $954,014.90. Ms. Akamoto reported that their state audit was a success. IRS requirement reporting is complete as required. Public safety report. Written report's been shared and reviewed by Mr. Frommel. Narcan use by law enforcement continues as a high rate. He reported 2 overdoses, death to date. The 4th crew room is almost complete at the ambulance garage. We continue to be understaffed in the paramedic field. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Mr. Alvarado presented the joint resolution for consideration for LCO and the county. Motion was made to approve the joint MOU with LCO. Meeting adjourned at 9:42. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Howie. Mr. Alvarado, letter B. Your mic on.
So what we have on here for item B is the Public Safety Radio Network. So this is just, I guess, kind of officially providing a resolution to move ahead with the public safety radio system. Attaches the proposal. This is strictly based on the GenCom proposal, where we are going to own and operate our entire system. The sets a budget of $2.75 million. It's a simulcast system. We would have sites in Hayward, LCO, we're working on the radio tower there, Birchwood, Meteor, and Loretta. Still involves the Pipestone as a backhaul site in the middle of all that. And it includes a potential for two of those sites to need new towers and shelters. That's how we get to the 2.75. Like you heard in the budget presentation, we did go ahead and include this in, so you see the financial picture of how it impacts the county budget. And the resolution just kind of officially says we're going ahead with this, and outlines that GenCom proposed a 90% radio coverage with 95% reliability, which was the minimum standards that we wanted, and allows us to engage with them and start moving things forward. This is the proposal we have and how we plan to move forward. Aaron from GenCom is in the back. I'll just offer that already in our preliminary discussions. There will be some, as we actually get into the finer details of solidifying tower sites, some of this could change. We might find a tower in a place where we were going to build a tower that will give us favorable lease terms, so we might adjust as we go, but this kind of says, here's the budget, here's the project, and we're going ahead with it.
Mr. Hellwig.
I would like to make a motion to approve the Sawyer County Radio Proposal 2024-10-224.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Hellwig, second by Mr. Stavinsky to approve. Any discussion? Yes.
Yeah, I would like to ask if there's any possibility to revisit the bug tussle proposal.
Well, the short answer is, yes, if the board wants to revisit bug tussle, we can. I have talked to them since last month's meeting. They moved ahead with the bonding that they were proceeding or needed to proceed with the counties that opted in. Not all of the counties that were part of the initial proposal that we have gone ahead. Some dropped out, some went different directions. But bug tussle said they would re-engage with us once they get through, this current project that they've moved ahead on. There would be the potential of doing the bug tussle project as a separate project from the public safety network, or even integrating our towers with theirs. Both of those are options, so. The short answer is yes, we can re-look at the bug tussle, but this would get us moving ahead though on the public safety side to get our simulcast equipment and start solidifying either hangar construction, or not hangar, tower construction or tower leases where we need them.
Because there was $1 million difference between the price tag, right?
Right.
And as far as timing goes, how much time would it cost us to go with the cheaper option, if there is a cheaper option we find?
Might need Aaron's help on this. Some of the simulcast sites we can start setting up pretty quick. New towers, if there's existing towers, that could move fairly quick, weather dependent, but new towers, it's like a year long, 9 months to a year to get a new tower sited and permitted.
Yeah, that's correct. So whether you went with bug tussle or not, to us, it's never mind. We can work with them. You can build your own towers. In the long run, it's probably a little faster to do it yourselves, to get the ball rolling. But it does take a substantial amount of time. By the time you do the permitting process, all of the regulatory stuff that goes into it, it takes a while to get the sites built.
Mhm.
So the sooner we get rolling, the sooner it comes to fruition.
Okay.
Ms. Hessel.
So, and what you're using is microwave, is that correct?
Microwave is the backhaul. Yeah.
Okay, and so what is the safety study on that? I know people have reservations about smart meters, they have reservations about microwave units. So what is the safety study on that?
So it's fairly low power in the long run, and it's at heights that you're not near. Microwave is not healthy when you're standing next to it, but you're talking several hundred feet in the air. So the measurable amount at the base of the tower is nothing, is negligible. You probably get more from your Wi-Fi router in your house than you will from many of these microwave dishes.
Yes.
If we start the project to get it going, and we happen to revisit the bug tussle, and let's just example, say it approves, is there a way then to, I don't know how I say this, pick up where we left off and maybe achieve some of that savings, or is it, you know what I'm saying?
Potentially, I just don't know. The savings was in not having to build the towers, the 2 tower sites.
Right.
That's the $1 million.
But if we go forward tonight, well, how long would it be until I mean, if you finish the towers, I guess it's a moot point. I mean, you can't save there. So if we revisit Bug Tussle, with the savings that was there at the Bug Tussle is come and gone. If we revisit the Bug Tussle, it's now shifting from a law enforcement issue to getting cellular service so that people can call law enforcement when they have issues in those areas.
Yeah, and I can't make promises on how it might play out, but one potential is we build our towers in Bug Tussle, we want to re-engage with them, we say, we have 2 towers, you can use these towers, and then you build your other ones, and now we have, back in talking about cellular service and broadband is really the upside. So we could generate, deliver that service to the taxpayers potentially, or generate revenue off of our towers. So I think there's opportunity there, I just don't know if they're willing to do that or how that might work out.
Andy, would we use the same tower placements that Bug Tussle was proposing?
They'll be close because we had told them where we needed the towers. Correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you're within, and again, there's some things to be said. It depends on county-owned land, I mean, things shift, right? It may shift 6 miles one way or 6 miles another. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter as far as coverage goes, if you're talking short distances. But yeah, it's within the same general area.
Mr. Van Etten.
2 questions. One is, in this proposal, does that include renting the property or leasing property?
I don't know, the 2 new tower sites, did you include land lease costs in there?
No, we went with what was gonna be county-owned land.
Right, we were trying to, in those locations, use county-owned land.
And the second question is, with the microwave technology, how old is this? And how, with everything that's moving with fiber and everything going with all the Elon Musk satellites and whatnot.
Sure.
How close, because we spent a lot of money on this system last time for the sheriff's department. And we never seemed to be able to catch up. And it was, then we had to buy this, then we had to buy this, then we had to do this. And now that technology has been passed up. So with this, what are we looking at? How old of technology is this?
So the base stations themselves are what we would consider like a second generation. So they're the latest. They've come out here, I think, in 2018. The microwave technology, it's all digital microwave. It hasn't changed in several years, 10, 15 years, because it's reliable. If you had fiber at the proposed sites already, I'll give you an example, Barron County. We're working with them right now. They, over the last several years, invested heavily to get fiber to their tower sites. And so if you have that, we would surely use that, but you don't. So the best option is microwave to pass the data from site to site.
And so back to the original question of, in this proposal, if we're gonna own this property and or lease it, is insurance included in this of what we're gonna be responsible for a lightning strike? Or because we're gonna be actually the owners of this stuff compared to Bug Tussle doing it and we're just taking advantage?
Right, I mean, all of our current equipment is insured, like our current towers and like Pipestone is insured by the county. I think that might be the only tower we own right now is Pipestone. We have equipment on other people's towers and that's insured, but it's not always the easiest.
But was this price of the millions of dollars included in that, or is this gonna be another additional fee?
That is
What
not,
about-
this does not include any operating costs, this is
So
just.
electricity and
Right.
upkeep, and then if we have to hire someone to go change a flashing light so an airplane doesn't hit it when we expand the airport
Right.
and so on and so on. So it's a gift that's gonna keep on giving.
Absolutely, you're right, yes.
Mr. Newman, do you have a-
No, he kind of just wrapped it up.
Very good.
I had a question.
Yes.
Under the coverage map that you show, there's indoor coverage, there's quite a area that's in white. So there's no coverage there. And is that national forest or what's not being covered?
So when we design coverage maps, the way we do it is we try to mitigate where population, so we try to cover where population centers are. We try to move things to where you don't have densely populated areas. So we try the best we can, but with simulcasting, you're gonna have some zones, and especially for indoor coverage, you're gonna have spots that you can't cover. When we run the maps, these are, what you're seeing for indoor is an 8 dB map, which essentially is your standard, wood framed home. A building like this, you would have to run a 20 dB map, and then that circle shrinks dramatically. The coverage within a building, a concrete structure, goes down significantly.
I just remember the report that we had at one time where they had no coverage in the winter school. They had it outside, but they had nothing in. So I was concerned about all those holes.
Yep, that's not surprising in a school that you wouldn't have coverage. There's things to mitigate that in the schools themselves, but that requires you to put amplifier systems within a building like this. You'd have to put it, you ever notice how you go into like a building like this, you don't have cellular coverage sometimes. I certainly see that in hospitals and things a lot too. And that's just because you've got a lot of concrete and everything else around you, the signal can't penetrate. So we'll put, in-building amplifiers in buildings quite like, in that kind of structure.
Any other discussion? Yes.
I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Van Etten's good points. Yes, there's gonna be a cost to operate this system, and we've tried to manage that. We've talked to them about the electricity costs, not so much the changing the bulb cost, but those are all concerns. We already have money budgeted now to operate our current radio system. We have a service contract with them, which we'll have with the new system. So we are cognizant of trying to manage those. And like when I mentioned that this is based on 2 new tower sites that we build and own, but then using the other towers. As we get into this further, like I said, if we look at, are there options to lease towers than build new towers? We'll look at that, but it has to be cost effective, because if we lease a tower, now that's an every year operating cost. Whereas if we build the tower, it's a capital project, it's debt service. So in the terms of putting together the county budget, we kind of like to build and own things as much as we can than to have annual operating costs. So that's why we'll have to do a cost analysis when those opportunities present. I'll just use one example that they've talked to us about is that the sheriff and people with history know that at some time we were on the XL tower down in
Meteor. It was outside of Meteor.
Meteor, thank you. As I say, between Birchwood and Exland, and there was reasons we got off of that, but there's a relationship there with them and XL where we might be able to get back on that XL tower at a really good price and have access to it. So that's something now that we're saying we're going ahead, we can get into discussions with them. Same thing, we're in the middle of discussions with WOJB on being on the radio tower. If we can't get on that at the right price, that might change. We might be back talking about making some changes. This proposal has that as a piece of it, is being on that radio tower.
So right now, we're at how much percentage for coverage with our current system?
I don't have the exact percentage. It's not good for portable coverage. So the whole design, that system was designed for mobile radio coverage, which, you generally have mobile radio coverage. But when the officer gets out of his vehicle, you don't. And I think they can all attest to that. It becomes a safety issue at that point.
And so what is the current speculation of what it's going to be?
You'll be at around 95% coverage.
And if it's not?
Well, the maps are what we go by. We can't guarantee. We don't guarantee coverage. We can't. But we do. The maps are fairly accurate. They're pretty good. We've done this many times, and there are provisions in there if you would performance bonds, things like that we can do. But I'm fairly confident with the terrain that you're going to get 95% coverage.
Mr. Elwig.
If I'm not mistaken, the biggest reason we went away from bug tussle was that $16 million issue, correct?
I'm not gonna speak for each individual.
But I mean, the $16 million though was no nothing to the taxpayer. They're just using $16 million of our money to borrow to bond.
Right.
And then they're gonna pay us back throughout that 30 years too. So we weren't gonna put any additional money on taxpayers. And that's,
All right. So we have a motion and a second to move forward with this radio proposal. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Yeah, well, that takes care of that. Moving on. Do you want to vote on this radio proposal towers? Need some help from the board.
I really like Mr. Karianen's idea of revisiting. You know, and everybody seems to bring up, how do we mesh these two together if we approve this right now? And we possibly can go back to Bug Tussle and see what they would offer.
Well, and
That's
even
what I
if
really
it's-
like.
Even if it's not Bug Tussle, you've got so many fiber companies in the game now. And this is what I spend my whole day doing. I think, you know, we still have to do something for the sheriff's department. But at the same hand, it makes a perfect point of, if I can't call 911, what good's it gonna be to do if they're not gonna be able to respond anyway? So moving forward and anticipating what's gonna happen in the future, fiber's here. And I think we really should not, back to Mr. Hellwig, I think basically what was gonna happen is it was gonna be a wash, because we were gonna get paid back over the course of the 30 years. That would pay for then what we're gonna spend on the sheriff's department. And so it was just cost effective, plus we wouldn't have to worry about maintenance. We don't have to worry about things going wrong. They own it, and we were off the hook, and they were just gonna use our borrowing capacity, which basically we're co-signing. And I just think that, the only thing I didn't like about it was they were putting pressure on us to, and we had a special meeting, and we're doing all this stuff trying to hit that deadline, and I don't think we should be in a rush. I think we need to think about it, and I don't think this is the way to go.
Mr. Sorowski.
I'm going back to months ago when basically what I was looking at, I know it was just me maybe, was the ability to have coverage, radio coverage, emergency radio coverage down in that Connors Lake area, the eastern part of the county, which I believe Mr. Rotek could agree with me that it's a far reach right now. As far as the Bug Tussle proposal, it also going into broadband and going into cell service. My main point was for EMS radio coverage. I'm not worrying about broadband in where there's houses that are 3 miles apart. I guess that's my point right there. And 16 million, there was a possibility of, if these companies go under, we would be liable for the $16 million. And I can't see putting that on our taxpayers.
Ms. Hessel.
So our job as county supervisors is to be proactive, not reactive. And so are we putting our law enforcement, what is the risk factor if we prolong this? Like, that's what I'm worried about. Like, I don't want to be reactive. I think our job is, so like, what is the time frame? You know, we keep bringing these, and then we did have that push, but what is the factual time frame where we're putting our law enforcement at risk?
Mr. Hellwig.
when were you gonna be like $1 million ahead on that deal too? Wasn't it like $1.2 million or something like that?
Bug Tussle would have cost us out of pocket $1 million less.
Oh, okay.
Like, it'd be 1.75 instead of 2.75, and The 1.75 is the cost of our simulcast sites, the shelters on the buildings, the shelters at the towers. I don't have it pulled up here, I'm just looking back.
So the cost to build towers right now, because that fluctuates, the price of steel fluctuates. So the last quotes we had, by the time you got done with the grounds work, and assuming it's county-owned property, you were at just over 500,000 per site. 560 some thousand.
Well, the thing is, each month we wait, like if we're gonna wait on bug tussle and everything, that's a month. If you're asking about safety for the officers, it's a month we're pushing it out, and it's a month longer that there's a safety issue for officers, EMS, all of our people out there. So, one of my thoughts was, and I brought it up before, was we approve this and then we look in the budget in the future as far as getting cell service out there. We try to get it ourselves.
Mr. Reagan.
Hopefully,
I think I'm in agreement with that and what Chuck is saying. I mean, and this sounds harsh. I mean, I think law enforcement and EMS safety is important. I'm just miffed at why that's important, but citizen safety is not important. That's. I mean, not to say it again, but I mean, you citizens out there, they're off on their own. If they're on this, there is no cell service. So just as the law enforcement is in harm's way, so is a citizen. But I don't know, to Mark's point, I mean, is there a way to meld these two now, or did that ship sail? Unfortunately, we didn't have a full board. We were missing some board members here when we made that decision. Now I feel like we're kind of in this quagmire. I want law enforcement safety. I don't know if this is a two-step, like this has to be a decision, then we reconsider the other down the road, or is there a way to meld them together? I mean, if we say no to this, is it speed up the alternative, or does it?
We could send this back to public safety, can't we?
You can send it back to public safety. However, I would suggest maybe it needs to be a joint committee of public safety and economic development. And I'm just taking away from public safety, what I heard is that, that they approved the resolution coming to the board because they're ready to move on the radio network because of the risk to our law enforcement. Their minds are not as concerned about cell service and broadband, but maybe it's a joint committee to put that together. That's just my interpretation of what I heard at public safety. To your question, I don't have the tea leaves. I mean, I think there's a way to meld them in the future. I mean, half of the project, not half, a third of the project is just the equipment, the simulcast sites, and that doesn't matter whether it's the hardware. It doesn't matter if it's on our towers or their towers. We still have to incur that expense of the system itself. Yeah.
Correct. The current system is not functioning to the level that law enforcement EMS needs at this current juncture. We're limping it along as long as we can, but there will come a day where that won't be possible anymore. And you're kind of at this tipping point where we'll go as long as we can servicing it and keeping it functional. But you have sites currently that are islands in and of themselves. They don't talk amongst the other sites. And it's a tough system to maintain at this point. It is.
Is there a route to implementation where we start changing out the sites where the locations are now and improve it? And then
you don't. The issue is you don't have the sites that you need now.
Okay.
And that was the whole point of adding 2 sites to get the coverage that was requested and needed.
Mr. Swarovski.
I just want to say that Mr. Righeimer brought up a good point, where it's not just the law enforcement, the EMS safety, it's the citizens of Sawyer County.
Mr. Reagan.
It sounds like it might be not possible to pick up that million. I mean, one of the benefits of the other alternative was that we were going to save 1.2 million. Maybe that ship has sailed. Am I reading that right? I mean, there's other issues of why we like the bug, or why I like the bug tussle thing. That was one of multiple. So is that 1.2 maybe that can't be recaptured?
I'm trying to think of a way it could be, because I'm having a hard time with timing in my head, because part of it is the towers, part is if we had bug tussle, we had fiber to most of the sites, and then we don't have the microwave equipment cost. So there were some savings there as well. I mean, in theory, you could, I don't know, maybe it doesn't work in theory, but if you rented some tower space temporarily for a couple of years until we're back engaged with bug tussle and have all the new tower sites, maybe you can still have, I mean, you're gonna pay the rental on the towers for a couple of years, if we can get a couple of year agreements, and then you can still recover some of that savings of not having to own towers long-term.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, if we made a mistake, by missing out on the citizens' advantage here, I don't want law enforcement to suffer, 2 wrongs don't make a right, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, but at the same time, I don't know if how do we even make that decision with what you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Then to earlier comment from Mr. Van Etten, I don't know of any other bug tussles that are doing countywide networks, like they come in and do it. But could we piece together something with the local telephone companies and their fiber networks and, go to them and say, look, we were willing to extend 16 million capacity to this company. What can we do with you to establish a fiber network, some tower sites, attract some cell phone providers and to use them then? We haven't pursued that, so I don't know if that's possible.
Yes.
We're still in discussion, but we do have a motion on the floor. I just wanted to remind you.
Mr. Bennett.
What would it cost to just rent on current towers to put our equipment?
We were quoted anywhere from 1,000 to 2,500 a month.
The one tower was in Loretta that we looked at. It's an SBA tower. It was around 2,500 a month. You would still have to have your own electric. You have to have your own shelter, and there's some other things that go along with that. But you would have to do all of that, and that's assuming that they'd still engage with that. But it depends on the company that owns the towers. It can range anywhere from Mosaic, because they've abandoned most of their tower sites. They're fairly easy to work with. It's $1,000 a month, no big deal. But you can go, and we've seen it as high as $5,000 to $8,000 a month. Just depends on the company and what equipment needs to go on there and at what heights they allow us. The other problem you have is we like to be at the very tip top for receive. We can be lower for transmit, but usually the cell companies are at the very top. So your coverage decreases then too.
How long does it have to be, that lease? The month to month? Is it month to month? Is it?
No, you'd sign a yearly lease.
But the year would possibly give us a year to not hurt law enforcement and give us time to rethink. We may end up doing.
I'll defer to that possible.
Yeah, it's certainly possible.
I mean, a year and then.
Depends. Again, we just wanted to get some pricing for the month to month. We haven't engaged them saying, okay, what are your, exact hard lease terms, but it's typically a yearly lease.
But I mean, it wouldn't, 1 year goes by fast, and then at the end of the year, we may end up, one scenario would be we end up doing we just postponed it a year, but law enforcement hopefully wasn't hurt in that year to give us time to rethink.
Yeah, so.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, and if your costs, just like everything, are not going, to decrease.
Right, no, I get that.
Are gonna increase as well.
And I just say that because it seems like we're hesitant to make a decision, so I'm trying to think.
Mr. Dubin.
Andy, how many of these towers right now do we have stuff on? They're up there right now.
So that is the proposed map. The only one that we're actually reusing, there's only 2. It's the Hayward water tank. That's just outside of here, and Pipestone.
And the Hayward water tank and the Hayward tower out on B. Dairyland Power.
Yes, Dairyland, yeah.
So we haven't talked to any of these other owners, LCO or any of these other owners yet.
We've been talking to LCO.
We've been talking to LCO. We've engaged, the Birchwood Tower is a mosaic site. Like I said, they've abandoned that tower. Washburn County is currently on that site as well. So there's that. We looked at the Meteor DOT site. They don't think they have the room, but it would require a load study to make sure that they have the room on that site. But that, again, is why we budgeted, we put in there money for a site in that area.
Mr. Hellwig.
I don't recall the gentleman's name from the Bug Tussle, but I spoke with him at length after the meeting, and I don't believe the ship has sailed. I think if Andy gave him a call, you get discussion going again. And I don't think there's any problem with discussing again with them. I really don't, from the way he was talking.
All right, let's move forward. Madam Clerk, could you repeat the motion, please?
A motion was made by Mr. Howard to approve the resolution as presented, second by Mr. Savitzky.
So there we are. Let's vote, let's find out if we're gonna go forward or what we're going to do.
Can I rescind my,
No, you can't.
excuse me?
Do you want to?
Yes,
Okay, where does that leave us, Andy?
just,
We,
Up in
were
the
you the
air?
second?
He was the motion.
I was the motion,
All
or,
right.
motion,
Does the second rescind theirs? So that means we're here with a ship with no sail now. So I think your options are to send it back to a committee or two committees, or
Would it make sense, besides public safety, to send it to land, water, and if we're using county land, what else would we use that land for? I mean, yes, it's a public safety issue, but it's also a resource issue. So I'm just wondering if it would be beneficial to have everybody weigh in on it. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, the only thing we did is talk to, if it's county land, it was gonna be most likely forest land in those areas, just to make sure that that's a use, putting our own towers is a use of our county forest land. Or it's acceptable within county forest land.
Okay, thank you.
And I only suggested Economic Development Committee because that's broadband and cell service have been a conversation there.
Mr. Savitzky.
Can I make a motion, send it back to economic development? Not public.
not,
Mr. Hellwig.
I was just gonna say, not send it back to public safety?
Well, this is the recommendation, send it to,
I mean,
I'll second.
you missed out. So a motion by Mr. Savitzky, second by Mr. Righeimer to send it to economic development. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
aye,
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. A lot of good discussion, we got a lot to do there. Zoning Committee report, Mr. Schuman. Oh, you're right, doggone it. Letter C, joint MOU with LCO, between LCO and Sawyer County Board, Mr. Alvarado.
Yes, so for some time, the county has had an MOU with the Lakota tribe for the CJCC. It outlines the formation of the CJCC, who are representatives. It also establishes a financial commitment from both sides of $50,000 annually. That last five-year MOU expired in February. And so we've initially communicated about renewing it. LCO had initially denied, but they reconsidered. And they did forward us a one-year MOU, so this would fill in from February of this year through January of next year. So we're premature to be talking about a new MOU to take its place, but they did make some changes. One is to have only one-year agreements. The second change was to include the tribal member status designations back on our Sawyer County Jail report. Those used to be on there. They were taken off and replaced with employment statistics for jail inmates. They would like the tribal member status to be returned, and that the Justice Point, which is our contracted agency for criminal justice, provide quarterly reports to the tribal governing board. So we've talked about those at Public Safety. Public Safety approved those changes and forwarded it to the board for approval. We also discussed these at CJCC and they endorsed the amended one-year agreement. So it's in front of you to approve the MOU for this 1 year.
Ms. Hessel.
I make a motion to approve the MOU between LCO and Sawyer County Board.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Haney. So we have a motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Haney to approve the MOU. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Public Safety. Zoning.
Okay, zoning, yep. At last month's meeting, the zoning committee heard 2 conditional use permits, both of which were approved. The zoning department land use permit numbers are still up. They're trending to surpass last year's numbers, which were the highest in the last 16 years. A town informational meeting was conducted late last month where town supervisors were invited to sit down with the county administrator and the zoning administrator to discuss different zoning processes and timelines. A report will be introduced to the committee tomorrow morning and then forwarded to the towns ahead of their unit meeting on October 28th. And the zoning committee will hold its monthly public hearing tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Thank you. No
Thank you.
action items.
Thank you, Mr. Schuman.
Yes.
Number 14, Land, Water, Forestry Resource Committee. Mr. Zarowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land, Water, and Forest Resources Committee met on October 9th at 8:30. Minutes of the September 10th meeting were approved by Mr. Karianen and seconded by Mr. Newman. A written report was provided detailing the activity in the Office of the Register of Deeds. In the Land Records and County Survey Report, a written report was provided. County surveyors identified area projects completed, including corner maintenance, reviewing 1 county plat, 1 preliminary county plat, and 6 CSMs. The real property report identifies 160 transfers recorded and 6 CSMs reported. In the Sawyer County Forestry Department, Kathy LaRue advised that trail preparation for winter has been ongoing. Most trails are encountering 2,000 to 3,000 riders per month. In the county forestry report, it was noted that timber sales are $4,083,365.50, and bid openings are scheduled for October 29th. A new trail system was proposed and a slide presentation was shared. Mr. Newman made a motion to table the approval, seconded by Mr. Karianen, to allow Mr. Peterson to work with user groups to work out concerns. In the DNR forestry report, Mr. Fisher advised of the major fire danger concern. U.S. Forest Service Ranger Mike Martin provided a verbal update as to forest health concerns in the area. In the Zoning Conservation Department, the department has been busy with site visits, dam monitoring, and getting a better policy in place with law enforcement for the Sawyer County Decontamination Ordinance. 2024 crop prices motion were made by Mr. Newman, seconded by Mr. Karianen, to accept the prices proposed for animal crop damage. Tax deed and foreclosure process was put on future agenda items. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Zarowski. Mr. Alvarado, letter B.
So we have a resolution on here for the Aquatic Invasive Species Program. Having the resolution approved is necessary for obtaining DNR grant funding, which we do receive now and would like to continue receiving for the AIS program. So that resolution.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, motion to approve the Sawyer County Aquatic Invasive Species Program resolution.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Schuman, second by Mrs. Wilson to approve the aquatic species program. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Economic Development Chair Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to keep this to a half hour or less. We met on October 7th. The Sawyer County Fair Association gave a report. Mr. Christians was in person, provided a verbal update. They had about 1,500 people Thursday and Friday night of the fair. He described the facility upgrades that they had going on were completed, and they are ahead of schedule for the 2025 planning and bookings for the fair next year. Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau, a written report was provided and reviewed by Ms. Simmons. Work on the new vacation guide is being completed now. In total, they plan to distribute 66,000 printed guides next year. A presentation was made by Cheryl Treeland. Ms. Treeland provided a verbal update of the history of the HLVCB and the development of the tourism industry in Sawyer County. In 2003, Sawyer County Rec Association and Sawyer County Rec Association merged to become the Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau. A handout of the historical data was provided. Economic Development Corporation report, Ms. Hessel read a report from Mr. Lamoro. They will be offering a profit mastery class in November for business as well as ESOP training. There were library updates. Ms. Nucky of the Winter Library reported a summer programming and October calendar of events. They have had a successful fundraising year. Ms. Larson of the Hayward Weiss Library provided a verbal update. The library received a $10,000 grant award from 100 Who Care. Circulation statistics were provided. Motorized trail and non-motorized trail report. Ms. LaRue reported high trail counts. An estimated of $4.2 billion was spent by ATV and UTV riders throughout the state of Wisconsin in 2023. Out-of-state resident ridership have both increased. Mr. Duffy advised that there are over 9,000 people registered for the 2025 Berkey, with the goal of hitting 11,250. Other trail events were reviewed. Mr. Alvarado provided a broadband update, advised that we have not yet received any BEAD applications to review. Mr. Karyanin reported on the meeting at ICAA and CEP, and Ms. Hessel reported on her attendance at the WCA meeting. And that ends my report.
Thank you. As long as you've got the microphone hot, finance report.
I'll keep this one even faster. Our finance committee met on October 10th. Again, there was Cheryl Treeland gave us the same presentation she gave the Economic Development Board of the history behind the tourism. Finance Department report, sales distribution. A written report was provided where sales tax revenues have decreased slightly in the county and across the state in the past month. A 2024 budget update, revenues and expenses are on track. Variables are grant driven. And 25 budget details were discussed. Investment interest rates are slightly down. Net new construction is up 1.32%. The FTE count will increase by 1.5 net with salary step adjusted for inflation. The 2025 budget includes adjustments from the CIP and debt service funds to maintain the levy at a consistent rate. The September CIP spending areas were IT, maintenance, and Sheriff's Department. 25 CIP projects include cell towers and bridge work. A written report was given on the investment update. We're providing showing a total year-to-date interest earned of $855,500 from all funds. EMS ambulance report was provided and reviewed by Mr. Markren. Ambulance calls by town were reviewed, and the committee discussed the current shortage of paramedics and the viability of adding an ambulance to Round Lake. In a 4-year comparison, ambulance revenues are down, but the department is breaking even. For correspondence, Ms. Hessel and Mr. Buckholz attended the WCA conference, and they gave a brief review of that, and that ends my report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number 17, Board Appointment Committee updates. Anybody have a report that they would like to share with the county board?
Yes, I do. I passed out this SEP board report. It's a very well put together report that the new executive director, Skylar Durrell-Eder, put together. She is doing a fantastic job up there. She's taken the bull by the horns. That organization found itself in dire financial straits early this year, due in part to the combined poor job that the previous executive director and the audit firm did. It was just, they both did a very poor job and allowed this entity to get way in debt. So she has laid off, staff they could get by without. They've closed the Spooner office. They're renegotiating some leases for other office spaces. They've got the staff trained to perform the essential duties they need to do. They just went through a review of their program with the state. 15 performance measures, 10 of which they exceeded and 5 they met. So they met or exceeded all of the performance measures in the most recent quarter. And she says she just went through a preliminary or a pre-exit review with Department of Workforce Development and was told that this is the best experience she's ever, or the best, she was impressed that this was the best review she's experienced during her time with the department. So it looks like they found a gem to run that organization, and it's looking good for a change. There's been a lot of bad news out of that corner, so just wanted to share that with you. So,
Thank you. Did we get that $5,000 covered for what we gave them?
We haven't given it to him yet.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, real quick, Sawyer County Lakuta Ray Transit Commission Board meeting was today. The main thing was Clifton Larson Allen was there and gave us our 23 audit report, which we got the highest rating possible with no deficiencies identified. Very successful Cranberry Fest. Our ridership is significantly up over last year. And as our director mentioned earlier, that we are looking at some advertisement on our buses for future decision-making, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Hessel.
I was just going to say the Wisconsin Counties Association conference was really eye-opening for some procedures that I think everybody should be mandatory to go at least one time while they're on the county board. It was great, but I think the Counties Association will send you all of their work shops information if you need it. So I won't belabor it, but it was a really great function, and I think everybody should attend at least once or at least show up when they're supposed.
Thank you. I heard that the meals weren't that good, but that's what I heard. Number 18, Mr. Alvarado.
I'll just hit a couple things. One, personnel. So we've actually done a fairly good job of keeping up on openings. What's gonna happen now, though, is we have elections coming up. We already knew that we were losing our 3 constitutional officers, the clerk, the register of deeds, and the treasurer. And so already we're, obviously people are gonna be elected, but there's deputies involved. So we've had a couple early exits in the deputy area, so we had to address those on the short term. And then we have some shuffling with the tax lister position becoming open. So we're starting to put out the advertisements for those. Kind of everything else we've talked about tonight. Land, Water, Forestry Committee, start preparing yourself. We have received a petition from Callahan and Callahan Mud Lake for the formation of a lake district. So they filed a petition with the county. That means we have to hold a public hearing within 30 days. So at the Land, Water, Forestry Committee on November 6th, we'll be holding a public hearing. So we have to get public notice out to the people within the district as well as the newspaper. After the hearing is over, we have to provide a report to the board, and then it proceeds from there eventually with a resolution from the board either to approve or deny the formation of the Lake District. And then once, if it is approved, then we have to help with setting up and appointing the initial representatives on the Lake District. So we already had requests, public records requests for the petition before it was filed. So I think there are, some people that are not in favor of forming it. But it's the first time that I'm aware of that. I don't think there are any lake districts in Sawyer County right now. So this will be the first time going through it. But I'd say it's gonna be interesting for us because they're primarily doing it because there's no ownership of the dam that makes up those lakes. And so there, people that have organized it are looking at it as a way to take ownership of the dam and make sure it's there for the long term. So we'll be going through that. And then, I guess we're in the process too. We have to make sure that their petition is complete and they have all the necessary signatures from at least 51% of the people that are in the district boundaries that they've identified. So that's underway. And the town board chair meeting, I met with the town board chairs on September 30th. That was in response to a letter that I received from the Sawyer County unit of the Towns Association, expressing concerns with the zoning, the process, the timelines, and the relationship with the towns. There's some ruffled feathers. I think the meeting was good. There was good exchange. I don't know that there was really consensus on anything. There was a lot of town opinions. The consensus on our end that we promised is to communicate better with the towns. Like Mr. Schuman mentioned, I think the zoning committee will see the timelines tomorrow, and that we promise to get those back out to the towns so they know the zoning process for rezones and conditional use permits. What we tell the public as far as application received today goes to the committee in a couple months, and in the middle there's notices to the town, and just informing the town more what the timeline is. We did also promise to have future meetings, especially if we're gonna be talking about changing the zoning ordinance. And I'll just maybe get into a little detail so everybody understands on the ruffled feathers. So it kind of came out towards the end, but part of it is that the towns are unhappy to have lost their role in the opening of county roads to ATVs. That change was made in the spring. At one point, the towns had a role that was taken away. And then after that, at the zoning committees, there was discussion on how the county can go about changing zoning ordinance. Currently, historically, I think the county has proposed zoning ordinance changes, got them out to the towns to get feedback and try to get them on board ahead of time. And I know at a zoning committee, it was talked about that there are other options. That's not state law. State law says we could change the ordinance and then notify the towns and they have 10 or 20 days to object. Nobody's proposing that we go that route, but I think they've heard and saw what happened with the ATV ordinance and then heard about the potential zoning process changes and feel like they're not being respected. I'll just put it that way. So we're trying to, I guess, build that bridge, keep them involved and make them more informed as to how the process works. They also brought up some stuff on TRHs. We talked a little bit about broadband. There was a request to share the gaming compact money with them. So we tried to open it up just to have more communication with the town's direct pipeline.
Thank you. Any questions? Good. Correspondence, reports and conferences, number 9. Anybody have anything? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you for your valuable time.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Would you announce?
Next month's county board